Call the regular meeting of City Council for Monday, January 13th, 2020 to order. A cool, brisk morning it is in Dawson Creek today in January, so we appreciate everybody joining us. Councillor Parslow is away this month for some vacation time, and Councillor Wilbur's away ill today, so we're a little short-staffed. So our first order of business this morning is our delegations. 2.1, we have Janice Clement in from the Dawson Creek Mirror in attendance regarding our Reader's Choice Awards for 2019. Good morning, Janice.
Good morning.
Welcome.
For those of you that don't know about Reader's Choice, it's a survey that we put out every year. You can vote for your favorite person, place, or business. And most of the votes are done online because it's up on our website. And the few stores that actually give out prizes as an incentive for people to vote, because there's hundreds of categories and we're always fine-tuning those categories. And I'm here to present the city with this year's awards.
Perfect.
And first we have Best RCMP Officer Jonathan Gullat. See here. Okay. Best City Councillor, Blair Lekstrom. Congratulations, Blair.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Best City Employee, Lisa Hawkins. Congratulations, Lisa. Sorry. Best place for a picnic is Kin Park.
All right.
Nice.
Kind of hang on to that one. Best place for walking, Rotary Walking Path.
Deal.
Best civic leader, Dale Bumstead.
Oh, goodness.
And Dale, you get two. I guess one's for home and one's for here.
Oh, thank you so much, Janice. Thank you. Thank you.
And last but not least, best firefighter, Cody Mears, and he was unavailable this morning. Thank you for your time.
Janice, thank you so much, and to the obviously to the mayor for continuing to put the program on. We really appreciate it. It's a fun activity, certainly, and I know I get lots of feedback from people in the community how much they enjoy it, and see the recognition going out into our community is a very positive. So thank you for that.
We have a lot of fun
Good.
with it.
Awesome. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you, sir.
Still waiting for the best shower,
Our next delegation this morning is always a special time of the year to be able to do this, and so we want to welcome Jordan Clement, Rebecca Crossman, the parents of our New Year baby, Mr. Henry Clement. So come on up, you guys.
Bring them out at 4.
So welcome to City Council, and obviously welcome to Henry as our newest citizen, you guys. We're always so proud of being able to welcome the newest New Year's baby into the city, and so we really appreciate you bringing him in today on a cold day, and I was a little worried about packing him up, but he looks like he's doing okay, and things are good.
Happy baby.
Happy baby. And so this is a plaque that we do every year to recognize and symbolize the birth of our newest citizen. And
That's awesome.
we really appreciate you guys bringing him in this morning.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Right.
Thank you.
May I take the honors?
Oh,
The mayor's always got to get that picture with the...
starts crying, boss.
I'm a grandpa, for goodness sake. Oh,
Free
he's
taxes for his
nice.
first 3
Yeah.
years.
We'll be voting on that. Oh, there he goes.
Just briefly.
All right.
Oh, thank you so much. And so, because it is such a cold winter day, we'll give you a City of Dawson Creek blanket to wrap them up with. And again, we appreciate you bringing them in today, and congratulations.
Thank you.
It's always a cool time of the year to have our New Year's baby. So thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thanks, you guys.
Right.
Thanks.
Don't wake him up. Don't wake him up.
So we had a little visit before. He's getting into his routine, and he's starting his sleeping and eating and all that stuff. So good job, you guys. Great job. Our next item this morning is another one that's has turned into a really fun event for us. And if I can have Heather from TC Energy come up and join me, and we'll tell the story about this presentations this morning. But I need Heather up here with me. I think, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year. So this is TC Energy, and this is the presentation of the kindness meters checks. And so I think 3 years, maybe now? I'm not sure exactly, but it seems about that long. We stumbled upon this idea of these meters old parking meters that we placed around town, and people put their spare change into them. And it's a way for residents and people to donate a little money, and the money goes to charities, and every year we draw 2 new charities. And so when the idea came to us, I reached out to TC Energy, TransCanada at the time, and suggested if they might want to partner with the city, and which they jumped on board unbelievably in terms of the support, and put $10,000 into the program. And so now they match all of the money that comes into these kindness meters, and that money goes to charities. And I love the lady who brought it to us from Nova Scotia. When we introduced it, she was the one that really kind of gave the best description of it. And it's that little bit. There's no pressure. Whatever you have in your pocket for change, you can put into the kindness meters. It's not money that would probably ever reach its way to charities in your community, and it does now. And so with the help of TransCanada, it's making a difference, and it's making a difference in our community, and we really appreciate the support that TransCanada have given to the program. So Heather, do you want to say anything?
You know what? Again, very happy to be able to continue on, as neighbors here in the community as well. We're here located in the Peace region, and echoing what you said, I love that idea, or that notion where, when you're digging into your pockets for that change, as opposed to it falling possibly into, the lost abyss of the couch cushions at home, it actually has another purpose, and carries through twofold, right? So, the convenience of being able to just donate a little bit of spare change, but those small incremental acts really do add up, and we are more than happy to be here and being able to provide support for this initiative, to continue to be able to provide that funding support for the organizations that continue to make a difference here in the community as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you. So our first group this year that were selected, and it's for the visually impaired group of Dawson Creek, and I see Margaret's in attendance and some of her folks, and we've got a check here for
The right check.
the giant check.
Needs more money, right?
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Happy New Year. Good morning. Welcome. Well,
Judy.
hi, Judy.
Nice to meet you.
Good morning. Welcome.
I'm Heather. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Hi, wonderful.
Good morning.
to meet you.
Come up. Just if you just stand up in here and squeeze in, and we'll.
If you want to come in here, hi there. Wonderful to meet you.
So the check is for $344.90,
All right.
and $344.90 of quarters, nickels, dimes have made a difference, and matched by TransCanada for the 2 groups. So thank you.
That's more than we've ever had in our 20 years of operation.
All right.
Oh, wow.
You good?
How good is that? Congratulations.
And a lot of this is going to go towards a workshop that CNIB is bringing up in April, where apparently old cell phones can help visually impaired people read. Don't ask me how, but they assure me it can. So if any of you have old iPhones that you don't want anymore, we're accepting them.
Wow,
Right.
good stuff. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming in. Thank you for coming in.
Just like that. Oh, I see.
And our next group we have is the Dawson Creek Arts and Wellness Fund. And I see Chelsea. Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Wonderful to meet you.
And a check for $344. Thank you so much. Do you want to say a few words?
Well, for anyone who doesn't know about our fund, we sort of mirror kids sport and Jumpstart, but for arts programming. We found that there was a gap, that there was no funding available for kids with barriers to arts programming. So we fund choir, band, piano lessons, visual arts, any sort of thing like that, any program that a kid wants to do from 0 to 25 years of age. We've been running for a couple of years now. We're about to have our AGM if anyone is interested in attending. And we have a Facebook page that I encourage you all to follow.
When and where's your AGM?
I believe it's on the 26th, although maybe don't quote me on that. At Haven, it's Family Resources.
Oh, right, sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
very much.
Good job. Thank you.
very much
Thank you, Heather. Thanks so much.
It's the 20.
And the 2020 recipients will be, that have been selected, are the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living and Literacy Now. So those will be our 2020 nominees. Our next delegation, Caitlin wasn't able to make it in this morning with her the weather, and so we'll put that one to our next meeting. Our next delegation, 2.5, we have Dale Campbell in, for the president of the Dawson Creek Mile Zero Society, Park Society, to give an overview of 2019. Good morning, Dale. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. I have a little handout for this. Should have had this well organized before, but I've left it with council.
No.
What's that?
I led too quickly.
Oh.
We'll keep on.
We had another very successful year at Mile Zero Park, even though our RV usage was down a little bit because it was a little bit of a wet summer and that. But we have a little bit of a statistical review for you here. Our total RV attendance or usage last summer was 6,458 people. At the Splash Park, we had 3,179 people there. At the village itself, we kept a little bit more statistics there. The LP event that they had, their annual event, 605 people. The Jamboree, about 650 people. The Halloween deal by the Kiwanis, about 1,800 people attended. The Christmas, the Rotary Christmas, 600 people. Visual Run was 120. Kids Camp 40. The Teachers Reunion Picnic was 50. And we had 15 school tours through there, for a total of 7,186 people going through the village. So that was a pretty successful year, we feel. We are planning on this year, hopefully having, maybe in conjunction with the Jamboree, having some demonstrations going on, maybe somebody doing some knitting, somebody doing some weaving, some carpentry work, maybe a blacksmith or something, somebody grinding some grain at the story of wheat, just to have a more interpretive activity going. We can't afford to hire, we don't have enough volunteers to man all those stations year round, but if we could start out with one, putting it in with one event, maybe we can do that. We also are, every year we review our 10-year plan or 5-year plan, and what you have in front of you in the handout is a new method of planning. It's called PATH, Planning Alternative Tomorrows with Hope, and Mrs. Parslow coordinated that, and that's the artwork there. You start on the right-hand side, that are some of the things we want to have at the Pioneer Village in the future. What we have already started or in the process has been a very, and it'll be finished up here this spring. We've finished the the roof and the deck beside the caboose. And so wheelchairs now can roll up and be on the deck and view through the window, because we're not going to modify the doors wide enough to let wheelchairs in, but they'll have the view of inside of that caboose. And with the roof and that on it, we hope that we'll preserve the integrity of that structure until such time as we can afford to renovate it and restore it. But that'll be down the road. One of the other things we want to do is on here is expand the railroad track. We have a little speeder. We have a speeder shed. We have a bunch of tools that go in for repairing it. We'd also like to have the Tupper Railroad Station brought in and or a replica of it made. It's sitting down there in the Fletcher Road right now, and the trees are growing up through it. It's probably cheaper to build a replica because it's a very simple type of building. But it's still in existence in the community. It would sure help for the Heritage Park down there. The other thing that we're very fortunate is that the co-op for a legacy project is partnering with the college and us building a replica service station down there. It'll be a legacy project for the Dawson co-op, and they'll be facing the highway there, as you can see if you drive by there now. It's about a $280,000 project, considering the labor at the college, putting a value on that. And NDIT were a partner in that for $50,000 or 18%. And thank you very much for that support, guys. That's very good. The other thing is the L&T Locksmith building. We built the Historic Society built a little building. The family, Giles, is donated all the artifacts that he had in his own shop and display case, so that's going to be the L&T Locksmith shop right on the main street down there. And that building is completed, lock up, but you know, it needs painting and that yet. That'll be ready for spring, and those displays will be in there. And also the Rotary gave us an old ticket booth that was at the fairgrounds, sold Texas taters or items out of it over the years, and it's being refurbished as a carpenter shop, a replica sash and door shop or fine carpentry shop things. So that are some of the things that are on the go, and these are some of the plans that we'd like to do in the future. A replica oil rig, one of the very first rigs or oil wells in British Columbia was drilled down here in the valley, 1921, I believe, and then BC government had a moratorium on drilling until the 40s, but there was, I think, 5 wells drilled in that time, but this one up here is one of the very first ones. We'd like to have a replica of that. We'd like to have some First Nations displays down there. We got an area that we feel that would fit, but we're trying to work as we have the funds available and means, and we're looking for more partners in, I guess you'd say, at the Antique Tractor Club wanted to help work down there and do some work or start something, or a car club or something. Well, we're sure open to all those ideas. The other thing we haven't got finished yet, I know you guys will be looking at it very soon, will be our new contract for the year or 5-year period or something. It's coming up in your agendas soon. But Ross has been filling us in on that, so we haven't had an agreement for a year now, I guess, but it's all right. Any questions?
Council?
No, thank you for the work you do. Thank you.
We certainly miss the use of the Dayton Hall. You will be talking about that later. It's been about a $14,000 a year revenue for us, and it fits in with everything down there. Like, we were afraid that the Halloween and the Rotary thing, because there's no bathrooms, well, we got porta potties, but that's not very good in the winter time, but there's no warm place for them for the youth to go in, but anyway, we'll deal with that as we come along on it.
Great job. Any other questions for council? Honestly, I really appreciate when you started Dale with kind of some of the data in terms of users and all of that. I think that's it would be, I think, surprising to most people to hear that the volume of traffic and activity down at the park, where you assume that it's some summertime traffic, but the year-round activity that goes on there, and that's really good information to have. Thank you. Councillor Earl?
Sorry, just jogged my mind while I was, you were speaking, Your Worship. Dale, thank you for your presentation, obviously the work you guys are doing. We recently made, over the last year or two, some changes to tourism, how we do tourism in the city of Dawson Creek. Are you working more closely with them to try and figure out how you guys can complement each other's efforts, or are you...
There was a booklet with that tourism was selling that provided entry to a whole bunch of facilities and that, and they did promote the Mauser Park quite a bit.
Good.
That wasn't a problem there, yeah. So,
okay.
yeah, they've been in contact with the board and our manager Bert, and yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think honestly the work that goes on down there is the work that's done by and accomplished through our volunteers, and we could not see the development of the Camboose, the replica station now. You see the volunteers and all of the work that's gone on. So we really want to, I think, on behalf of council, express our appreciation to all of the volunteers, you and all of the volunteers down there that are putting in the countless hours to preserve this history, and it's turned into such an important piece of the infrastructure for our city. So thank you for that, to you and to all of them.
We have a good relationship with the city, of course, and we have a good board, and we're all working together, and Mauser Park Society and the Historical Society is a good combination.
Good. All right. Thank you, Dale. Thanks for coming in today. Uh, 2.6, our delegation, Leanne, from Pembina Bears, and we're coming in from Grand Prairie, and obviously with the weather, they've will move that forward to a future meeting. 2.7 is a delegation that'll be here for 1 o'clock. So we'll move now to item 3, new councillor business. 3.1, Councillor Kemp.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you guys know, I sit on the library board, so been on for a year, and I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what the library does, the things they're doing, just in case some of you may not know. So I made some notes just to kind of go over. 30% of the population they serve Dawson Creek and surrounding area are active library users. So 30% of the population. The total circulation of books for the year, they circulate about 70,000 books for the year. Their collection consists of printed books, audiobooks, magazines, DVDs, ebooks, and e-audiobooks. They also house a physical copy of the Calvary collection, which is a local history collection. Their total collection is about 69,638 items that you have access to at that library. Patrons also have access to about 88,400 ebooks and e-audiobooks through the library last year. You can borrow books from other BC libraries as well, and lend books. Our library also lends books to BC libraries through the interlibrary loan system. So in about 2019, they did about 3,000 interlibrary loans were done through our library. They offer Wi-Fi. There's 6 public internet computer stations for the public to use. They also have North Winds Healing Center clients use the library 1 evening a week to communicate with family and friends while they're in treatment. They provide scanning, emailing, photocopying. Each month, staff deliver books and audiobooks to 9 patrons who are homebound in our community. So they make sure that they have access to the library by going to their homes. They run children programs. They have Babies and Books, which is newborns to age 1. They have Toddler Time, which is for 2 to 3-year-olds. Preschool Story Time, which is 3 to 5-year-olds. And 2 after-school kids programs, which is kindergarten to grade 7. And these programs run 8-week sessions twice a year. The Summer Reading Club also happens, which registers consistently about 600 students for the summer for the reading program. They do senior board games, mornings once a month. They have the library book club also meets there once a month. They do lots of invigilation exams for local students at the high school, also at the college, stuff like that, so they do those. They provide registrations for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, which is partnered with the Rotary Club in Sunrise. They've done quite a few things in 2019. They did the Park and Play. They participated. They have early pop-up events and baby welcoming parties. They do the Friends of the Library and the annual book sale. They host Easter cookie decorating for children. They do the Career Day for the Canelta Elementary School. They do Multicultural Fusion Festival, and they participate in that. They participate at the Pioneer Village when they had their opening day event. They hosted a houseplant exchange night at the library. Also hosted a long day seniors focus group meeting. Participated in the fall community registration evening. They hosted the hockey story time with players from the WHL, the Edmonton Oil Kings, and the Prince George Cougars. They hosted 2 local author book launches as well last year. They held the annual Christmas craft sale. Participated in the Jingle Jog for the Christmas Carnival during the Christmas tree light up. They host the Friends of Library Christmas gift wrapping event, and they just recently had the New Year's Eve family celebration, which was very well attended at the library. And they host also the 2019 Reading Challenge. So there's lots of things going on at the library, so just coming to let you know everything that's going on, and they're very busy there, so.
Great job, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions from council? It really is more than a place to go get a book, right? It really is a community gathering place with, and I've always been amazed at how much activity and events and things go on for the community at the library, and people should really take advantage of it because it is an amazing facility with amazing people.
Absolutely.
Good job, thank you. Any other new councillor business? Councillor Earl?
Your worship, not to steal your thunder in your mayor's business, but I was called upon to attend the banquet for the Peace Country Beef Congress this last week, as you were otherwise trapped in Prince George due to the inclement weather. I was happy to show up and eat your dinner.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
It was the 5th year the Peace Country Beef Congress has held their event at the Event Center. They were delighted to be back once again. They can't say enough nice things about the facility, and their banquet was sold out. And that's hundreds of people, many from out of town, coming in, staying in hotels, going to restaurants, buying stuff at the stores. So really, really great work by the folks at the Event Center in putting it on seamlessly, and really pleased for that partnership. They did a tremendous job. And one last thing really quick, through my work with the Northeast Community Resources Foundation, or Northeast Regional Community Foundation, pardon me, we just call it NERF. The donation for this year, they're still in the process of kind of organizing and getting everything in line, but there was a decision made to donate $15,000 in total, 10 from Dawson Creek's allocation and 5,000 from Pouce Coupe's allocation towards the Southeast Health Services, so Boltry's House. And they'll be organizing a check presentation and stuff in the coming weeks and months, but I know it's a cause near and dear to your worship's heart, and I think very important to the city and the region, so I just wanted to
Great
bring
job.
that news back too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for attending the Beef Congress, and thank you for eating my meal.
Everything
I
was going
appreciate
great
that.
until I asked for ketchup on the stage. No, bad room to do that.
Well, we appreciate you going at that late notice, and again, the Beef Congress have done now that annual event taking place in the Canada Event Center, where it used to move around Northwest Alberta, Northeast BC. Now it's held annually at the Event Center with the Lakota Center and the Event Center. It's turned into a great event for us, and thank you for doing that, Jeremy. Any other new council business? Minutes of our regular meeting of council for December 16th for adoption. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Chevekoff, any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Thank you. Any business arising out of the minutes? Item 6 is correspondence. 6.1, we have the BC Achievement Foundation Community Award nomination forms. Call for nominations. Anybody have any suggestions? Maybe we can bring them forward at some point. Councillor Lexstrom?
Your Worship, do we share this with other organizations in the community to, put forward any names they consider or talk to us about that? Are they aware, or do we share this out?
Through your worship, not unless we are requested to do so, but we definitely can.
I think it would be worthwhile. We have a lot of incredible people. I mean, far more people deserving of this than will receive it, of course, but I think if we could have, just the opportunity to put it out into the community organizations so they can, if they feel they could attend or participate in this, putting a name forward, it'd be worthwhile.
Thank you. So, do we have any Chamber of Commerce, Community Futures, the civic clubs I can think of as some examples?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, okay. So maybe if we can motion to direct staff to forward it out to various community organizations, as well as we'll post it on our city website as well as the Facebook page. Moved by Councillor Earl, second. Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, we have a letter from Jennifer Strachan, the Deputy Commissioner of the Commanding Officer for the BC RCMP, that we received in December following up on our meeting at UBCM. And I think identifying the additional provincially funded positions to the Dawson Creek Detachment up to. So,
Receive for information.
Thank you. Receive for information. Second, Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.3, we have a letter from Lincoln Carrier and Will Irvin regarding the Dawson Creek Canucks are looking to do some things in regards to the Koi Cup in 2019 or 2020 and 2021. Duncan, do you have any?
Yes, so through your worship, first of all, I think we're having some IT challenges with Civic Web. I think everybody's probably been booted out, but IT is working on that right now. But essentially what they've asked for is, there's two asks. There's 3 games in 2020 that they're working on, and that value is about approximately $1,600 to waive the ice time fees for those 3 games, about $500 a game plus tax. And then they have a 2021 Koi Cup ask, and that has, I believe, 7 games, and it's around $4,200. So there's 2 asks there.
Okay. Would we deal with the 2021 now as it relates to the 2021 budget, or is it one ask and we deal with it all at once and fund it under 2020?
So through your worship, and I'd maybe lean on Ross, because I think you maybe had spoke with them, or Shantae had. They may need some commitment in order to bid on it. I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
But I mean, there is some time. If we had to bring it back, we could.
All right. Just for clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Lexter?
Your Worship, I mean, being able to host and showcase our city through this and the Canucks, the work they do in our community, I think this is a worthwhile cause. Now, I'm guessing it will come from our grants.
Correct.
Is where this would come. We're looking at that, but I certainly would wholeheartedly support the request and giving them the answer for the 2021 early so they could, begin the process. I don't think they're guaranteed to host the Koi Cup as it stands, but they're going to, I think, put their best foot forward. And as previous champions, I think they stand a great chance. So I would at this time move support for their request on both.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Would we also, as part of our event sport tourism, and move it over into that group to ensure that we're linked with them in regards to these things? And is that a discussion that's separate? Because we look at event sport tourism now through the tourism model to be engaging in supporting these types of, I think, events. Duncan?
So through your worship, we do have the grants policy in the report section. If we, if it were 30 days from now and this policy were in place, our recommendation would be yes, kick it over to Tourism Dawson Creek to take a look at it. We can still do that. The idea is any events that people are looking for funding for that are bringing people to the community, we'd like to gauge that and see if that aligns with our event tourism. So if you like, we can do that along with this.
Thank you. It was just a question of whether we would, I guess, because we haven't got the grants policy in place yet. So.
Yeah, we don't have it in place yet.
Any further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.4, we have a letter from Dale Campbell, President of the Mile Zero Park Society, regarding request regarding the Dayton Hall. Duncan, do you want to speak to this first?
Okay.
Maybe can we receive for discussion? Maybe
So
Councillor
moved.
Lexner, Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Duncan.
So through your worship, the request, and again, I don't have everything in front of me, I have my notes, but the request is, my understanding is the group is looking for some detail on what the fix would be. We have some detail, we've provided some reports from Force Engineering. My understanding, working with Ross, and Ross attended the meeting here not long ago, is that the group is looking for some specific information on what that fix would be. What is a fix that would meet code, and what is all the components of that fix, and what that estimated cost would be. And so I can say we have a lot of information that's already been done, and unfortunately we were unable to get a hold of Mike Zigan from Force to confirm that he could provide more. I don't know that he'll ever be able to give any certainty, but there would be a cost associated with this, and we would get an engineer to go through the building and say, this is how you fix it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lexner?
Have we shared the information we have on the building with the society?
The Force Engineering reports?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe they've received all of the reports.
Okay. I mean, in reading this report, and I think I've read it correctly, it seems that it is far more cost-effective to rebuild the building, if I'm reading into this, versus not just the foundation work, but then having to bring the rest of it up to code, I think is part of what would have to happen if we replace the foundation. But if the group has opportunities, and I mean, they reach out all the time, they get volunteers that would have to meet the code and so on, but if there's a way to work with them to see this happen, I think it's a worthy discussion, but I think it's been looked at quite heavily, certainly in the past year that we've talked about it since this new council came on. I think it began even before that. So I guess the question I would have of ourselves is, what is our plan? Is it to make a decision today? Is it to refer it to the organization to say, do you want this? Or, but at some point, we're going to have to make a decision on this.
Duncan?
So through your worship, if council, the request is that council essentially dedicate some funding to do additional research within the facility and some additional research on the structure, and determine whether what the process to fix it is, as opposed to what are the options, what's the process to lift it, and do something with that foundation and what those estimated costs would be. We have some of that. We don't have all of that. It would be a little more exhaustive than what we've provided to date. But again, yes, the question is, what's the future of the building?
Councillor Earl?
Yeah, just so with respect to the additional engineering work that would be required in order to get a more fulsome picture of what kind of work is needed, do you have any kind of ballpark range of what those costs would be to the taxpayer?
Typically, on these engineered reports, depending on how exhaustive they've been anywhere from, $5,000 to $10,000. Some of the assessments that we're doing, Ross, they've come in at about $20,000, I think, and doing full building, 10-year capital planning. But I think it'd be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. Sound accurate, Ross?
Yes, thank you. One more quick follow-up. In our last conversation we had about the building, the one thing that struck me, and which was, I think, cited as like one of the deciding factors in the recommendation to demolish it, which I think we opted to go back to MOPS and see how they wanted to proceed, was that the floor is, I forget the term that was used.
Deflected. Sorry, through your worship, deflected.
Deflected, yeah. Is that, so that in putting more money into it is my main concern, is that we're gonna spend $10,000 and be told no matter what it's moved.
So through your worship, the deflection may never go back. There are ways you can cut floors out, you can replace floors. The report really says, look, I can't give you any certainty around what will settle back down because it's been bowed or deflected for such a period of time. That would just be an additional cost to cut that out and replace that, and that would be on the society.
So it's it's something the cost to fix or address would be contained in the engineering report that's being
No,
asked for, or-
that would be an additional cost
Yeah.
over and above, as part of the construction, sorry.
Councillor Javetkov and Councillor Lexton.
You know, we got a fairly good estimate of the costs from Force Engineering already. You know, I think it's in excess of $500,000 there to try and deal with the foundations and that type of thing. And then they expressed a concern about the unknowns, which is the electrical and the plumbing and insulation and all the code requirements. If you just do a rough extrapolation on that, we're talking in excess of $1 million. Like, I don't know, you're never gonna come up with an accurate quote, you know, with spending a bunch more money on it. So if you use that estimate, I think, you know, if the society wants to pursue grant funding or something like that, just with that much knowledge that you need more than $1 million, you know, that should be enough to go out and start beating the brush. So, you know, if they make a commitment to take the project on themselves, then that's a decision that we can make at that point. But I think spending more money to get a closer estimate, you're never going to get a close estimate. You know, there's always going to be a bunch of unknowns in there. I drove by it the other day, and the snow off the roof is melting, and you can see the rafters, and, you know, there's obviously lots of internal issues with that building. So I'm not in favor of spending more money on it.
Thank you. Councillor Lexton.
I guess just following through, I share Councillor Javetkov's concerns about spending more money on this. We've got an estimate, a number of them, that I think about $406,000 is the cost for a foundation, which then if we put a foundation under, it leads us to upgrades to meet the code, which are costed at $700,000, as I read in this report, so at 1.1. Total cost to demolish it is $250,000, still an extensive amount of money to look after that. The only thing I'm thinking is if the society was to pursue options for funding and so on, do they not have to own that building to qualify for some? And presently, I think the city owns the building, or do they, as I understand that?
Duncan.
Through your worship, I believe the city owns the building. Often in cases where societies are applying for grants, we, as long as council has a resolution of support as the owner of the facility, they are eligible. We've done that in other facilities.
And have the discussions we've had with the society to date, is there indication that they want to pursue taking this on? Or is it that the city, they'd like the city to, I mean, I think I may know the answer to that, but.
So maybe if I can interject, we have Dale here, and if by unanimous support we can allow him to speak, and maybe it would be worthwhile to have that discussion right now. Councillor Kemp?
I vote that.
Move. Councillor Lexton? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
It's like you
If you don't mind joining us, Dale, and
We're talking to the third person.
All right.
it might save us a whole bunch of
Yeah.
time.
Basically, what the question is, what is the very minimum work that has to be done? Does the basement have to be removed? Is there any other way? Is the foundation walls have not crumbled, they're still secure? Could we just reinforce how the building sits on the foundation? A different method, maybe even for, you know, scrapping the use of the lower basement and that. And even if the dance floor has a crown in it, does that make it unsafe for the building? All of these things we don't know, and this is a question. Because the Park Society would be interested in owning it if it would be within our finances to get a repair to the very minimum and expand on it, improve it as time goes on. But we don't have the answer yet, you know. Why replace a basement if it doesn't have to be replaced? Does it have to be replaced? There's lots of things I know that ties the hands of the city and how they operate. But if we knew what the very minimum was, then our society would try to finance that, and if that became the issue then, well, we would buy it from the city or something if we could do it, but we don't want to buy it from the city just to pay $250,000 to have it demolished.
Duncan,
So that is the question. That's the very minimum. Nobody said, everybody wants to raise it up, do the foundation, but is it necessary? The foundation hasn't deteriorated in the last 3 years since it's been empty, so is it necessary?
Duncan?
So through your worship, Dale has identified some things that haven't been looked at in the reports. I remember the issue with some of the bowing on the flooring wasn't necessarily the floor itself. It was, did it present a trip hazard, and did it stop any emergency exits or other things from functioning within the building? That was part of it, as far as egress and occupancy and et cetera. As far as steel beams, what was provided by the engineer was lifting the building off, right? That was part of that $406,000 that Councillor Lexstrom already mentioned. Lifting it off and completely moving it off, as they would have concerns working under it. They didn't feel that WorkSafe would allow that. And then they had a demolition and a removal of the entire foundation. They didn't get into details of steel beams, and I don't know, Ross, in any of your discussions, did they say why they didn't? Was it something they couldn't do, or it was just something not looked at?
Thank you, through your worship. Again, the deflection, the work, the movement that's been in there has eliminated the public occupancy at this point in time. Pretty difficult to recommend new steel beams or this and that, given the current condition. They would have to get in there and do some more digging. I'm not sure that they will find a solution at this point in time to mitigate or repair the existing structure. There's some significant damage in there at the moment.
So, I think, so two things I think we can say with confidence, that as we enter our capital budget discussions, this council, I think probably, I'm going to make a huge assumption here and leap, but we're not going to put a whole bunch of more dough into that hall. And I think the information we've received from Forest Engineering, who would give us that detail in terms of saying, here's what, if you're going to do some work to this building, and I don't know if it's different because it's a publicly accessible building, whether that changes, whether it's owned by the society or the city, I don't believe it does, but their estimates of what would need to be done in order to be able to rectify it, to make it safe for public occupancy, is significant, which we're not going to undertake. So I guess the question is, do we put another $5,000 or $10,000 into it to do that work, to do that engineering estimates, Dale, to say, to give you some confidence to the society that if we made an arrangement to say, we're not going to spend a bunch more dough on it, but if you guys now could find a way through that stuff, you would be willing to take it on, and I think that's a discussion council would have to have, but it's just now we're at the stage, we're not going to put a whole bunch of more dough into it, but are we going to spend another 5 or 10 with the engineering to do some additional analytic work to understand whether it can be salvaged? Paul?
You know, I've been involved with engineers here a bit in the last year or so, and I think what Force has given you is kind of their approach, and I don't see them saying, oh, you know, we sort of overestimated, we can do it cheaper. I think what they've given you is their, what they would be prepared to approve. And I don't see the city backing off and saying, well, you know, we won't worry about engineers, we'll just do it ourselves. You know, that's not going to happen. So in today's world, I got lots of surprises with code and engineering standards and stuff like that, and it's something that you know, you just have to go with, because that's how things work these days. You know, they're going to give you solutions that they're comfortable with, that they're, you know, the standards are well within safety concerns, and you know, it's I think it's those cost estimates, I think, are what's there. That's the reality.
Councillor Lexstrom?
It's just following through on that. Dale, a question through to you. If, I mean, we have a recommendation in this report that says, look, let's move forward and with demolition. is what really it's saying. Prior to moving that motion, would the society, would you entertain going to talk to the engineers yourself to say, look, is there options here available to us before council deals with this motion, which maybe we could table it until next meeting, which would give you that time frame to get an answer? They may very well say, oh, you know, there's absolutely no other option, or there is, and here's what it is, and give you an idea of what the society may be thinking at that point. Would that help, that kind of time frame?
I would certainly go talk to the boys at Forest Engineering to say, hey, have you looked at 3 or 4 different options? I mean, I'm not arguing their recommendation whatsoever. I'm not saying they're wrong in what they recommended, but is there other solutions? But I would be glad to go and talk to them, and that doesn't cost too much, because they're pretty good guys in that respect. They'll say, or they'll come out and say, well, we could look at something.
Right.
What if we facilitated that with Forrest and our staff and with Dale and have that discussion?
That's all we're kind of asking for at this stage.
So
We're
let's-
not asking the city to invest a bunch of money. We're cognizant of the situation here, so.
So if we can table this item and request direct administration to facilitate a meeting with Forrest and our staff and Milesboro Park Society with Dale to have that further discussion before we bring it back to council for a decision. Councillor Joeco?
Could we add doing an estimate on a new building?
Well, I think we'll do that as a follow-up once we have that discussion. This first piece will be, what are we going to do in the immediate? And then if, depending on that, we'll do the long-term. Duncan?
So, Your Worship, we do have a probable cost now, albeit it is from the previous report, which was 2018, but we do have a probable cost of 1.3 for a replacement of that facility.
Which would be a modern, energy-efficient facility.
A basic building, yeah.
Councillor Lexner?
This time I will move we table the recommendation
And direct staff?
and direct staff to pursue a discussion with Force Engineering along with the society to see if there are any available options to look at.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dale.
Thanks, Dale.
Well, having no internet was a little clunky. Duncan?
So through your worship, we
Not having any paper in front of me.
Yeah, we can do some paper copies here. It doesn't appear that Civic is coming back. Do we
Well,
have
I
the
got it
file?
back now. It's spotty. It's coming back, it's coming in, and it's out, so we'll keep going.
Through your worship, administration's having difficulty getting through to iCompass. Lines are busy, so obviously it's provincial wide and
It's coming in and out, so.
My paper is working very well here.
we do have.
And we're so happy to hear that.
We do have a backup flash drive if anybody wants to download off their laptops.
Well,
Mine is up and working.
Yeah, it comes up and down, so. yeah.
All right.
Item 7, reports, 7.1. We have a report from the city planner regarding our railway grade crossing assessment results. Do you want, Councillor Lexon?
For discussion, Your Worship?
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yeah.
I guess in going through this report, I mean, it's encouraging that we had the response from CN, that the whistle cessation that we began the discussions about, they've agreed for movements between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. only, so they will cease through the night, which is really what we were after. This report was based on what the needs are going to be come 2021, and we've got that laid out. I do have some questions. When I read through it, it looks to me as though 8th Street is available for whistle cessation as it presently exists with the sight lines. Maybe I got confused, but reading some of the others, it looked to me like if we cut some brush down and moved a couple of signs, they'd be available for whistle cessation as well, versus the $400,000. Am I reading this report right?
Duncan?
So through your worship, the key factor on 8th Street is there is a warning system there. There are lights and bells. May not have a gate, but there are lights and bells, and we don't have lights and bells anywhere else in town. So that's the biggest difference. Sight lines and there's speeds and there's all these other pieces, but there are flashing lights and bells on 8th Street.
But, so go ahead.
If I could just carry through, but if I interpret the the pictures and the sight lines and all of that, I thought some of them met the same sight line distances. They may not have the bells and whistles, but did I read it correctly that if the speed limit was posted properly, and if there was a stop sign, there would be no need for whistles at all at these? Whistle cessation could be achieved at some of these? Am I reading that right?
Okay.
Through my understanding, I'll kick to Kevin, but my understanding is there has to be some kind of lights and bells regardless of sight lines, etc. And 8th Street is the only one that has that?
Yeah, through your worship, our understanding is that the sight lines are mandatory regardless. And those requirements that are identified, we have to do that no matter what. If you want to go to whistle cessation, you have to have some sort of warning system, like say 8th Street has the bells and lights, so that's why it complies. We can apply for that now. The other ones, if you want whistle cessation, you need to have the sight lines and all that, make sure that's good, but then you have to add the warning system.
So if I could just follow through. Okay, understanding that then, the $400,000 per crossing is quoted in here, as I understand, would be for gates and everything else. If we were to just put the lights and bells, do we have a cost for that? I can't imagine it would be $400,000 to put what we have at 8th Street. Does anybody?
The quotes that we received, sorry, through your worship, is that the gates are $37,000 of that $400,000.
Wow.
So I believe that, now it might be a high estimate, but they're gonna give you something that's, gives you a little bit of room, you know, so that's what we can do.
Okay.
Thank you. Further comments, further questions? So from my perspective, I think certainly we need to, and we should be moving forward with 8th Street and asking them to now implement the whistle cessation at 8th Street. We meet the criteria. We can ask them to have whistle cessation there. And none of this now is in our 5-year capital plan at all. So I would think that we would want to build this now into our 5-year capital plan as a minimum to begin to have that discussion about this as a topic for capital for the future and how does it fit into our 5-year capital plan. And to me, there's two now immediacies of 17th Street and 15th Street if 8th Street is already covered. And then we should start and begin those discussions. Councillor Lexton?
Well, unless there's further discussion, I would at this time move the recommendation contained in the report, which is from our city planner. Railway grade crossing assignment results be received. Further, that the City of Dawson Creek implement the required measures as listed in each report totaling approximately $3,000 and begin the whistle cessation process at the 8th Street crossing as it already meets the requirements.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl? Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have report 20002 from the watershed coordinator regarding the flood mitigation action plans. Maybe we can have a motion to receive for discussion. Councillor Earl, second. Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Duncan, do you want to?
Sure. So through your worship, and I'm gonna ask Kevin to help me out here, but we've been working our way through this flood mitigation action plan now. We've completed, I believe, 2 of 3 steps, I think, is where we're at right now. We started shortly after the flooding in 2016. We did our, I guess, a vulnerability assessment, for lack of a better word. Now we're looking at flows and flow monitoring and you know, lack of technical terms, but looking at what our flow is, which has brought us to a point now where we can actually start modeling some scenarios, and those scenarios could include things before the creek gets to town. It could also include some specific crossings, and we would be able to create a scenario in which we made some change and look at that impact on the remainder of the creek through the community and how that would maybe benefit or mitigate some of the flooding. So this is step 3. We've been very successful through the UBCM Flood Mitigation Action Plan granting. In fact, my understanding is that they've used us as a bit of an example for other communities moving through the process. Have I missed anything, Kevin? No, I've got it. Okay.
So, yeah, I honestly, I think this continues on getting us some really positive information that allows us to help us guide some of those decisions. As a side piece, I've reached out to the Ministry of Emergency Measures Planning. The new deputy, Lois Hall, is the new deputy. I've reached out to her, and on my next trip down, I want to try and connect with her. I think obviously we've been successful in getting this grant money, but to me, the next step will be grant funding for some of this infrastructure work that we start now to prepare and plan for. And we had a great relationship with Becky Denlinger, who was the deputy for emergency management, and I want to establish this with these guys because I think obviously with this flood planning work we've done and mitigation planning, the next will be grant money for some of the infrastructure work. And as we now start to get some of that planning work, understanding what we need to do, we should be then starting to prepare for engaging with the government on some grant money for some of that infrastructure work. If it is a bridge at 102nd, or if it is upstream storage or whatever it is, I want to make sure that the province are there with us to help us engage in hopefully some of that grant money that may be available for infrastructure improvements. So, motion, recommendation, Councillor Earl?
I will move the recommendation that report number 2-02 from the Watershed Coordinator regarding potential funding from the Union of BC Municipalities Flood Mitigation Action Plan be received. Further, that Council supports the City of Dawson Creek's application to the UBCM for a Flood Mitigation Action Plan, which includes a Flood Mitigation Options Assessment, Official Community Plan, zoning amendments, and community education. Further, the Council supports the proposed activities and authorizes staff to manage the grant.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp? Discussion? Questions? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 7-3. That's a good proposal. Still working. So, thank you. Yeah, thank you. 7-3, we have report number 20003 from our corporate officer regarding our grants policy. Councillor Lecter?
For discussion. For discussion, Your Worship.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
In just looking at this, we've talked about it as a council before, reviewing our grants policy and how we look at it and the funding that we go through. I think it's going to be important. The one thing when I look through this, and I possibly missed it, there is time frames associated with when these grant applications come in. I don't see that. Have I missed that? That's the only thing. Are we doing it 2 intakes?
Quarterly, I believe it says.
Quarterly, is that, okay. Have we heard from any of the users that traditionally apply? Is that workable for them? I think our administration has had some discussions with the user groups on this since this discussion was started. Just curious if we've had any feedback whatsoever. I know there's a 30-day period associated with this should we adopt it today, but in discussions leading up to how we got to where we're at today, have we had some preliminary discussions?
Yeah, through your worship, there has been no discussions with the groups yet. That's what the 30-day review period is for. We would be taking whichever, if this policy is approved in this form, we'd take that to the community groups and come back with any feedback.
Okay.
The reason we chose quarterly was that it was it would be easier to take than semi-annually. That's a pretty drastic change from as when received to semi-annually. So that's why we went with quarterly.
Thank you.
Further comments, questions? To me, I think this, there are times when a community organization or group comes and they get involved in an activity, looking for some help and support, and it's usually time sensitive. So I really like the idea of having that flexibility within a quarterly intake so that you've got the ability to be able to respond to some of those things for community groups that are really have council support, but you're just tied up by policy that you can't get involved. So I really like that idea. Any further discussion, Councillor Earl?
Just one question and kind of a point of clarification. In order to better assess financial, and I'm reading from page 3 of 5. In order to better assess financial need, applicants may be asked to share financial information for their organization. So I assume the may is in there because there are organizations of different size with different capacities and different degrees of sophistication for whom some of these reports might, mom and pop shop organizations that are doing good work that might not be, might not have a bookkeeper or whose treasurer's report might consist of, once a year sitting down, whatever. I just want to make sure that it's not going to be so onerous that it's a deterrent to people who are operating above board, but maybe not with the same level of sophistication as the city, that it's not going to deter them from pursuing some support. So when we say may, is that kind of with the understanding that we'll gauge what they're capable of providing as they put it in? Or?
Yeah, through your worship, that's the reason for that wording, was to allow for a very simple application form for the lower funding requests.
Thank you.
Thank you. Duncan?
So through your worship, and maybe just to summarize it, I mean, the intent is in the past, we've received a wide range of requests, and this is really to put some accountability on the groups making the request, understand what the money is going to be used for, but also some form of report back to council to say, hey, our event was a success, this many people came to town, really, City of Dawson Creek. Of course, depending on the value, that'll push the accountability and that threshold for information. So that's going to be a sliding scale.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right.
Councillor Earl?
Move the report number 20-003 from the corporate officer regarding grants policy be received. Further, that the grants policy attached to this report be approved pending the required 30-day review period. Further, that pending no negative feedback is received regarding the policy, that any outstanding applicants be requested to reapply under the parameters of the new policy.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.4, we have report number 20-004 from the corporate officer regarding the council conference attendance policy amendment, and this was just an amendment to our policy that for council attendance, and where we've added a couple that are annual events, which were, I think, the Resource Forum and Kofi weren't identified in our previous policy, and they are conferences that we've been attending on a regular basis, an annual basis, so it made sense that we include them in the policy from that perspective, I think. Brenda, do you have any?
Yeah, through your worship. It also includes the change from any additional conferences over and above those listed would require council's approval. Instead of just your approval.
Good. Councillor Lexton?
Your worship, I will move the recommendation where we approve the amendment as presented.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Any clarification? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, Brenda. 7.5, we have report number 2020-006 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our permissive tax exemption report. Councillor Lexton.
For discussion, your worship.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Duncan?
So through your worship, just to open it up, so this is something that's been discussed by council on a couple of occasions, and the direction from council was to bring something back before the end of January. You have the report in front of you. The resolutions have been broken out into a number of pieces for a couple different reasons. Just to kind of iron through what the groups will be, what those thresholds will be, but also there may be some councillors who sit on some of the particular groups and may have to excuse themselves for that decision, however, can still participate in the other areas. So it's been broken out into, I believe, 8 different resolutions to be gone through one at a time.
Thank you.
Anything, Flavia?
Councillor Lexer?
The question I would have, and I'm not sure we've done this yet, is with some of the changes that we see here, there could be some significant financial impacts to a couple of organizations. Have they been notified? Have we had discussions as to what that impact may look like for them yet prior to us? Because if we adopt this, it's adopted, as I see this, but we want to, you know, I'll give you an example, the golf course. Have we spoken with the golf course to see what this could mean to their financial bottom line?
Duncan?
So through your worship, the intent of the report is not to adopt the bylaw at this time for 2021. The intent of the report is to provide direction to staff so that we can go out to these groups and say, council is considering, you know, a $15,000 threshold or a $5,000 threshold and phased in over 5 years, and this is what, you know, based on today's values, you could be paying over the next 5 years. And I believe it says in here to invite the groups back to council within the first quarter to provide some feedback. So by no means are we approving the bylaw at this point. You won't see that until September in order to meet the October 31st deadline. We're just setting the direction so that we can have the engagement with the public.
Okay, I mean, that clears it up. I mean, it's going to be key that we do engage with, there is going to be an impact without question on some of these groups, and the idea of being able to engage with them prior to a bylaw being brought before us is going to be important. It may vary our thoughts on that bylaw if it does alter anything, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that was, the direction we had, when we had the discussion last fall, is that we would use 2020 as an opportunity to engage with the proposed changes that we might see within the proposed permissive tax exemption bylaw, how it would impact the various groups, and use the first quarter of 2020 to engage with those groups to say, look, here's what we're looking at considering within the changes to the bylaw. How would that impact you? What are those impacts to you? And then that way we can include them into our bylaw that would be done by this fall, I think, for the 2021 tax year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Giacomo?
Yeah, I asked a question before and I'm still not clear on it. On the public worship properties, that's a legislated requirement that they're exempt. So all of these properties here that are listed under public worship properties, are they over and above the actual churches, or are they ancillary properties, or what are they?
Duncan?
To your worship, do you want to answer that one, Flavia?
Yes, through your worship, yes, according to the legislation, the place for worship, they are granted automatically the exemption. However, there are some specific areas like the parking area and the halls that it's considered that the council needs to be the one exempting those areas. So that's the portion that we see on the Schedule A.
If it's at the place of worship, it's only the
building,
the facility in which the worship takes place. It's not their convention room. If there's an accommodation, if there's office space, if there's parking lots, that's not legislated. That's council makes that decision and direction to include it all in the permissive tax exemption or not.
So there are some properties here, and I'm not familiar with all of them, but one, to me, I consider it sort of a spec property. Like, should that even be included in here? And that's the Ark. They've got a property that was donated to them by Trent Lindbergh, just on the north side of the forestry building. That's vacant. So, you know, it's not, it doesn't involve anything, any activities or anything with the Ark. So, to me, you know, those types of properties in here shouldn't be in here. They should be taxed.
Duncan?
Through your worship, and so it's been broken out in a fashion that you can remove that if council chooses to.
So,
go ahead.
So when does that, is now the time, or
No, we'll direct staff to, this is the direction we're gonna propose within our bylaw, and we'll meet with those various groups, and then through this year, we then will make those recommendations through to the bylaw and the changes to the bylaw, which will have to take place in 2020, and we would then make those directions as part of the process. Brenda?
Yeah, through your worship, my thought was that the decisions would be made at this point so that we could meet with the community groups.
Right, and that's what we're giving direction on now for the first quarter. Duncan?
And so through your worship, under number 7 of the recommendations, Dawson Creek Youth Center Society, also known as the ARC, is where you would make that decision to say we're going to exempt some of their function, but we don't want to exempt this particular property or whatever council's decision is.
Go ahead.
Because it's not evident in here, you know, what churches have those kind of facilities. You know, it's a bit of a task to go through and identify those vacant lots or whatever. That one in particular I know about, but the other ones I don't. So you know, we just about need a motion to have administration identify those types of lots if there's a will from council. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way, but so I'll try that. I'll make a motion that we ask administration to identify vacant lots or lots that aren't critical to the operation of the church or organization, so that we can exclude or potentially exclude those from the permissive tax list.
So do we want to do these one at a time then? Is that Duncan?
Yes, unless this is a motion, and it, sorry, it doesn't have a seconder, unless this is a motion that essentially says we're not going to do any of the other things, we're going to go back and do more work. We need a seconder first.
So I do have a motion, but it was the reason I asked the question is because that places of worship would be the second item we would deal with under the motions if we go through them one at a time. Brenda?
There is no problem with switching number 1
Okay.
to 2.
All right. So we'll do that as the first one. So you're making a motion. I don't know if staff have got a clarity or not on it.
Well, I mean, to go through them line by line, like the first one, for example, the Anglican Synod Diocese of Caledonia. What is that? What property is that? Is that a property with a building on it, or is it a vacant lot, or is it a part of a parking lot, or? So it's pretty hard for us to go through item by item. So if my motion asks administration to review those and identify the ones that have vacant lots or lots that aren't critical to their operation, so that we can determine you know, if they should even be in the permissive tax list.
Duncan?
Flavia, you have something?
Yes, through your worship. On Schedule A for places of worship, the only vacant here, which is stated on this table, is Grandview Chapel. All the others properties, they have a building and they are in operation for Schedule A. So for the ARC specifically, it's stated on Schedule B, and it is stated as the ARC. From the rest of the other buildings, they have a structure. So that's to clarify.
So, and I guess to answer Councillor Javetkov's issue about us going through them individually, we're saying they will be granted, a place of worship will be granted 100% tax exemption with the threshold of 15,000.
Yeah, so through your worship, if approved, if when we get to that motion it's approved, all places of worship will qualify for 100% exemption because none of those facilities have a property tax over $15,000, so they would all be exempt, correct, Flavia?
Correct.
And so what the intent of this direction is that we cap then the amount of permissive tax within that category that we would face in the future. Duncan?
So through your worship, we're placing a cap and council is placing a value on the service and although we're not there yet, we've said that places of worship receive the highest value at $15,000 and that value scales down from $10,000 for housing, I think, and $5,000 for sport and recreation, and council has placed that value on that service, and that's what those thresholds represent.
Duncan?
And one further comment, as far as importance, and I'm not sure exactly what the context was, I would expect that any group that you approach and ask them to indicate the importance of something being permissively exempt, I imagine everything that they do is going to be valued and important to them.
So,
Looking for a seconder.
so I just wanted to bring some clarity to that for the motion, that's all.
Well, the motion is to identify some properties that would not be included in the permissive tax if they're not an integral part of that,
Place of worship.
yeah.
So we're not going to, so your suggestion, we're not going to tax exempt them, allow the tax exemption for the parking lots and or other components to the facility other than just the place of worship?
Well, I mean, if there's an office connected to the place of worship, I mean, that would be something that you would give a permissive tax on. But if it's vacant property that could actually be sold or, you know, is maybe on spec, then that wouldn't be included.
Just Duncan?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship, one approach would be, as we move forward and try to move council forward, because we need some feedback from the groups, one approach would be to say places of worship up to $15,000, etc. However, in circumstances where there's a vacant lot or an office or a hall, they either are exempt or included or are not. As opposed to trying to go through and figure out what each one has, you could lay some policy or some governance structure and say, we're not going to consider these things. And then the groups can come forward and tell you why they're important.
So I'll make that as part of my motion. I'd like to advise the group so that they're aware, you know, that some of these things may not be exempt.
Okay. So I have that by way of a motion. Do we have the motion clear enough to, no?
Would we not accomplish this, Your Worship, with what we're doing here, should this pass and we go through the discussion with the groups to say, look, you know, this is where it sits today. There's a real option that council may remove some of these. Here's the list that we want to talk to you about. Is that not going to be accomplished under the passing of the recommendation as it is to meet Councillor Javakov's?
Well, the issue will be then if we put a threshold of 15,000, nobody is even close to that, so none of them are going to come to our meetings to have that discussion with us then. That's the issue, right? The Christian and Missionary Alliance of the Canadian Pacific District, as an example, their municipal property taxes would be $6,500, $6,600, and I think they're probably close to the highest. So they wouldn't come because they're only 15 grand. So I think Councillor Javekov's point is, if you got the vacant lot in there, or if somebody's got other associated or ancillary uses of the property that aren't directly to that, should they be tax exempt? And I'm reading your mind.
Yeah, well, that's my point, I guess. You know, and like you say, I mean, if you don't raise the alarm, they're not going to show up. I mean, if they've got $15,000 freeboard and their taxes are only $500, you've got probably 40 years of free board here, so that's not gonna raise the alarm.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Earl, second. Duncan, do you have any?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
That
So,
information from them?
yeah, so what if approved, what we would be saying to the places of worship is council's approving $15,000. However, not all of your facilities may be considered, and we recommend you come in and speak to council about what you have. Essentially, I'm trying to just wrap that up, because if we say 15,000 is approved, then you're absolutely right, they won't come in. So we need to say at this point it's 15,000. However, council is considering not including things such as parking lots and other non or secondary uses, I guess you would call it. It's considering it, and that may bring people in if that's what council's looking for.
That's what you're after?
Okay.
Gotta write that down.
Councillor Earl?
And the reason I seconded Councillor Direct, because I do know there are some organizations who do get some additional revenue from renting out space for, childcare or counseling and stuff like that. And although I'm not necessarily, I think those are both very valuable amenities to offer, they are being leased out to private businesses, which are making a profit off. So it is a discussion worth having. And that's my rationale behind seconding the motion. And I'll stop because this is dragging on.
Yeah. There's 20 on the list of places of worship, so how we facilitate, how we manage it. So anyway, we'll move it forward. Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Lexton?
We're back to the main report now.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, page 228 to 243. Through to Duncan, it says council should be aware that any exemption in the assessed value also affects the tax collected for other agencies like school, regional, and hospital taxes. So when we make and I just want this for clarification, we make a decision to exempt a property, we're not only exempting what the city can collect in our tax structure, we're also making a decision for the regional district and for the hospital. And do we ever hear from them to say, hey, hold it, we need those taxes? I'm curious on that.
Duncan?
So through your worship, they do not receive less funding. The amount that's required by them is just spread out among the remaining parcels. So if it's $10 going to the RD, it will still be $10 even if there's less people participating in it. They will still receive their funding, correct, Flavia?
Yes, that's correct.
Very similar then to our tax exempt. For every dollar we exempt, we collect it from the taxpayers of the city to offset that. Okay?
Yeah. And it is exempt for PRRD, school taxes, regional hospital district, all of those other associated streams. Duncan?
And sorry, through your worship, also, if a group is going to start paying based on these thresholds and based on phasing it in, they will now be eligible to pay the hospital and the RD. And so we're looking at our portion, Flavia, but they may pay in addition for RD, hospital, school taxes, etc.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item, if we can go to the report, recommendation 1, that nonprofit organizations holding leases within the city-owned buildings be granted 100% of their permissive tax exemption. Councillor Earl?
I'll make that motion.
Move. Second. Councillor Lexton? Discussion? Go ahead.
And I just want to highlight, it's not that we're not looking at revenue savings in these areas. It's just that we've identified that this may not be the best way to go about it. So just
city-owned facilities.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 3, organizations included in Schedule B, not-for-profit owned properties be placed in the following categories with the associated limits which are listed. I'm not going to read them.
So moved.
Councillor Lexstrom, second. Councillor Earl, discussion. Councillor Javetkov?
So this is the not-for-profit housing?
Yep.
So the driver house, which is basically an apartment building, is exempted. Why is it exempted?
Duncan?
So through your worship, the easy answer is that it's met the thresholds of the policy in the past, but maybe Flavia can elaborate. Do we know much?
No, mainly they placed their request for exemption in previous years and it was granted by council. Fully granted.
Based on the merits of the policy.
Yes.
You know, we saw a bunch of new applications for that type of housing, although the new applications were for individual houses. I guess I question the validity of having those in a permissive tax situation. I don't know who funds those houses, but or those kind of rentals. Whether the federal government does, but I think we should be looking at them to collect taxes.
For them specifically, or for all of them listed?
Well, the Southeast Community Resource Society, I guess I assumed that they were covered under the provincial government agreement where they contribute taxes or contribute a grant or something. So,
I don't think so.
No, they're all exempt. Community, anything Society for Community Resources, Society for Community Living, and the Provincial Rental Housing Corporation that's run the disability apartments through the Society for Community Living, they're all exempt.
I guess I got a problem with, you know, if there's a thing like the driver's house, or the driver house that's basically a federal government building, they should be paying taxes.
Or granted.
Or a grant, like, even the provincial ones,
well, I would say all of them are like that. All of them are provincially owned and operated through a grant to the Society for Community Living or the Southeast Community Resource Society. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think those are all provincially funded facilities that are operated by the society, aren't they? Duncan?
My understanding, and again, we don't delve as deep, is they're nonprofit societies and that they survive on grants and limited revenue.
I'll make a motion that we consider removing the Dawson Creek Native Housing Society driver house from permissive tax.
Excuse me. Your
Brenda?
Worship. This motion here is just to set the limits. Later on down is where you would, they're specifically listed in the motions following.
Okay. And under 7? Okay. Thank you, Brenda. So we've just set this basic...
Yeah, number 5 has the driver house. Just whichever category it fits into.
Okay. Thank you. Further discussion on the motion under item 3?
Which is just to set the...
Just to set the threshold?
And the phasing.
And the phase, yeah. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 4, organizations in Schedule B not-for-profit sport include the following, and they've listed the 3. Brenda?
I'm just wondering if there's any conflict of interest at this point.
Oh,
Do we retain quorum?
I don't get any money out of them, but
if you're on the board,
I'm on the board.
yeah,
Do we still have a quorum?
yeah, we're still good with 4. One more of you cannot go to the washroom, though. Go ahead,
I'll
Councillor.
move 4, understanding that we're going to have an opportunity to discuss the proposed policy with this organization before anything's finalized.
Thank you. Second? Have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Kemp, discussion? Councillor Lexman?
Just follow through. This is what I'd spoke about earlier where, you know, it's going to be hugely important that we engage the organizations that could be negatively impacted if all of a sudden we adjust the tax bill for these organizations in the tune of thousands of dollars. And I know we're looking at a phased-in approach, which is worthwhile, but we also want to make sure that they can continue to provide the service, because I don't see many, if any, organizations that don't help the economic well-being of our community, whether it be in a social manner or sporting manner. There's just a wide range. So I know we've had some preliminary discussions about this, but this could be an impact that through our discussions we're going to find out if we're going to need to adjust what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, there's no single, I don't think, and I looked through the list, I don't think there's any single organization that will be more adversely affected than the golf course by the proposed changes. So it's a big number and a big issue. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Get Paul back in.
Do you want to,
Sabrina,
well, I was just saying, do you want to take a, are you good to go, or do you want to keep going? Do you want to have a 5-minute break? Anybody okay still?
Oh, 5 minutes is good, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Let's take a break.
Let's we'll recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. So we'll call ourselves back to order, and we're back into our agenda on item number 5. So this, our organizations and Schedule B not-for-profit housing include the following. So this would get to that issue you raised, Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah. So I'll make a motion that we consider removing the driver house from the permissive tax.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? For a second time, do we have a seconder? And a third time, do I have a seconder? Okay, motion fails. Councillor Eckstrom?
Could I move 5 for discussion to be prior to?
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried? Go ahead.
Your Worship, the reason I move it for discussion is noting what the intent, I think, of Councillor Javetkov is. I am just not sure how Driver House is funded. If they receive a grant, it's not like when we receive grants in lieu from Hydro, for example, as a Crown Corporation or whatever. So I don't think we would have the option of saying if we exempt them, taxes would be paid by an organization other than the Driver House. As I understand, it's a non-profit organization that runs this facility. I'm happy with moving forward under the auspices that if we approve 5 as it is, that we gain some information prior to us adopting the bylaw, the future bylaw, which is not for 2020 but for 2021, which will give us the information we need to say, hold it, how is this funded and operated? What is the intent here? Are they eligible to make these payments? Something like that. It's just, I would like some more information before I consider taking somebody on or off on each of these. I have no problem with the, look, here's our intent, but I just don't have the information I need to make that decision right now.
Councillor Javetkov?
So with my motion, if it is passed, it would raise the alarm with them that we're considering removing them, so they would bring that information. If we just pass this, they wouldn't give us any information. But with my motion, we're asking them to come in and tell us why they should remain with permissive tax exemption.
Okay, I thought it was to remove them, sorry.
Well, I don't think we're actually removing them. We're giving them a chance to come in and represent themselves.
Duncan?
So through your worship, any of the direction provided today will be sent to the groups, and it'll indicate the council is considering removing or council is considering changing or thresholds, etc. Until the bylaw is actually adopted, anything can change.
So with Driver House at the current recommendation of a $10,000 cap threshold, their tax obligation would be $8,600, so they're nearing that threshold, but they're certainly not impacted by it where they wouldn't or would not engage us.
Yeah, essentially.
To Councillor Giroux point. So there's 3 of them on this list. The Native Housing Society, Community Resources Society, and the Society for Community Living that are impacted by this. If that's an issue, and we clearly don't know how they're funded as societies, nor have that information. If council would like to get that, you can, if you want, I'd be willing to do it, direct it back to me. I'll arrange a meeting with each one of the groups to get that information from them, and then bring that back to council as part of the process. Save them having to come for a specific meeting. Brenda?
Through your worship, I do believe there's that information's in the application forms that each organization completes. I don't know.
Oh, okay, so if it's available, then we can read it and review it on our own.
Yeah, and if we need to update it, we'll request additional information, but we can bring that back.
So we have the threshold, we have the direction, we can review that, and if there is then some concerns, we can, how do we engage that then for the follow-up?
Sorry, through your worship, so we will have to provide council any additional information. Ideally, this will all happen at one meeting. I mean, essentially, it would be nice to get these groups, anybody who does wish to address council at a particular meeting, and try to coordinate that. And at that same time, if council has that information, you can make your final, not your final decisions, but your
recommendations to the bylaw.
Yeah, to bring it back in the fall.
So then can we ask then for that, if we can have, if that information is available, that be provided to council?
Okay.
On how they're funded?
So Flavia, I think we have some of it. It may be outdated.
Yes.
Yeah, we have some of it. We can request some updated information, and if they ask why, we can tell them.
Sure. Thank you. Councillor Lexter?
Your worship, then as we move forward on this, if a motion is passed on 5, these would be exempt at this time. We're asking for additional information, or we're going to review additional information as a council. Make a decision. And if we make a decision that, for instance, Driver House is to remain on there, that's one thing. If a decision by council is made to remove it, what time frame are we looking at? I don't want to put them in a position that come fall, we hit them with this decision, and all of a sudden they're planning through, a shorter period of time, being able to plan for it. Are we going to try and address this issue with what we're asking as council for more information in the next couple of months, so they know what the future years hold for them? I want to ask that of administration, because I know you guys have your hands full right now.
Yeah, I mean, the intent is the first quarter. Now, really the work will be on behalf of these organizations to bring forward that information. If you feel you need more information before making this decision, then your direction to staff is either to invite them or for us to go back and find out what they submitted and provide that to council. Yeah. And that can be your sole direction on that particular piece if you don't want to make a decision until you see more information.
And we're going to have this done by the first quarter.
That's the intent, as long as the groups are able to participate.
Councillor Giroux?
I'd feel a lot more comfortable with them coming in and making representation. I mean, the information that we have, our interpretation of it could be off, or maybe we don't have complete information or whatever, but to make a decision to exempt them or not exempt them is a big decision. I think we need them to represent themselves.
Unfortunately, that didn't pass. It didn't get to the floor.
But you made an offer to
get that information.
Get that information, or ask them to come in.
Not them. I was going to get the information for all 3. So we have on for discussion. So direction. Councillor Lexter?
Just so that I'm clear on this, then, Your Worship. So as I understand 5, if a motion is passed today, as we have on the other 4, these people would receive their tax exemption. You're going to reach out to gain additional information from each of the ones under 5, which is Schedule B.
Well, no, administration said they haven't. Brenda?
Yeah, through your worship, I could probably help with providing a suggested recommendation that the organizations be advised that council is considering, and then the permissive tax exemption for your organization. And then that would provide all of them the opportunity to come back. So if there's any doubt as to whether you wanted to exempt these organizations or not, then you direct us to provide them with notification to come and present to you. Just a
I'd make a
suggestion.
motion, you know, to advise them that we're considering their tax exemption.
And that we've given the direction of that the threshold is 10,000, right? Duncan?
And further, that you would like them to provide some financial, updated financial information about their funding sources? If
From all three.
that's what I've heard?
From all three.
Pardon me?
From all three?
From all three.
Okay. So Councillor Javetkow's made that by way of a motion. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Lexstrom? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 6, organizations Schedule B not-for-profit are seniors and others, including the following, which are the South Peace Seniors Association and Society for Community, or Community Resource Society with the Reconnect Youth Building. Councillor Earl? Moved?
Moved.
Second? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kemp, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Item 7, organizations in Schedule B are not-for-profit and social related, including all of the following. Councillor Lexstrom?
I would so move.
Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Councillor Earl?
One just question, is it Ron Pettigrew Christian School that isn't currently operating this year? Or one of the private schools isn't operating this year?
Through your ship, no, they are not operating as a school.
Okay.
So right now they are doing activities but not as a school, so BC Assessment also reclassified them outside from the automatically granted for
Okay.
properties that work as Christian school or as public school.
Would they get captured automatically by BC Assessment then? Because they're not operating as a school, Flavia?
Yes, so BC Assessment actually included them in the list of properties that needs to be decided if it's going to be granted or not permissive tax.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Councillor Javetkov?
So what are we approving all of these organizations to get tax exemption?
Yes, on their, the threshold?
So the ARC is included in this one, and that's a property, as far as I know, that is not occupied. It's basically on speculation. To me, that should be excluded.
So we would provide that by way of specific direction and the motion.
So do we need
an amendment?
An amendment?
Yeah.
Well, I'll make the amendment to exclude it.
What's that?
Are we talking the ARC at the end of
No,
17?
the property across the road that they...
Yes, okay, that's the one you
It's
referred
down at the
to.
forestry, yeah.
Yeah, that's the property you're talking about, yeah. So that's the vacant property across the road on 17th Street is the property you're referring to that shouldn't be tax exempt,
Yeah.
the recommendation. Okay, further discussion? Oh, so sorry, do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Earl. On the amendment, discussion. Councillor Lexstrom?
If we're going to go down this road of doing this, I think we're going to have to do the same for the other ones that we've already passed. Like, and we've talked about we're going to invite people in, but how do we pick one organization, say we're not going to give you a tax exemption on a piece of property, and then allow another that we're going to give you a piece on a raw piece of property and exemption? I think we've got to ensure, and I'm saying maybe we will, but we want to have some continuity in our decisions here so that the ARC, for example, is not labeled out and they now pay taxes on this, and maybe there is a place of worship that owns a piece of property that we are going to give a tax exemption on that's a vacant property. So I think we just want to be consistent as we move forward here.
Well, yeah, we are. Councillor Earl?
Sorry, Your Worship. So in supporting this Councillor Javetkov's amendment to the motion, I anticipate staff communicating with the ARC, and hopefully they can come in and explain to us what their plans for this is. You know, as long as I'm happy to grant the exemption, provided they can give us some explanation as to what their ultimate goal is with this land, and that it's going to be in the serve a good purpose for the community. If it's what I don't want to do is just create a situation where you've got a vacant piece of land sitting there undeveloped for 10 years, not paying taxes on it with no incentive to develop it. So if there's some holding cost for that, at least there's an incentive there. So that was, as per Councillor Javetkov's argument, the one thing that did stick out to me. Whether or not there's similar situations with other organizations that I'm not aware of, no one that council's raised and hasn't brought to our attention, but I'd be keen to have any similar conversations which might need to be had, as per Councillor Lekstrom's point on being consistent.
Councillor Javetkov?
So my amendment would be similar in wording to what Brenda said, that we're considering removing it, so that would require them to come in. And the other ones, like all these other ones, I believe there's buildings associated, and I thought, you know, I don't like that threshold system, but at least that does deal with it to a certain extent. But this particular property, I don't think even belongs in the permissive tax exemption. So, you know, they'll all be notified that the threshold is being applied, and then the ARC will be notified that we're considering removing it. I mean, we're not making the decision, we're asking for their representation.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Lekstrom?
Would it be, I guess it would change the intent of the amendment if we want to add somebody else in there to bring forward? Look for that.
Brenda?
The amendment should be voted upon, and then there can be an...
And then if there's another one that we want to add?
Okay.
Ready for the question on the amendment for the ARC? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Go ahead.
Just for maybe administration has this, I see Peace Region Internet Society is on there. I think originally when they were established, they provided local internet service as one of the first. Are they now in direct competition with the Teluses and the Shaws of the world? Are we subsidizing a society that's in competition directly with the private sector? Is the question I have.
Duncan?
Through your worship, they provide a similar service. The only difference is they're a non-profit society.
Tax exemption is for the entire building?
That is my understanding, Flavia. Yes, it's for the entire building.
Of which other functions take place in the building, other businesses, other Peace FM, Aubert, et cetera, right?
If I could, at this time, move the same motion as Councillor Javetkov, that we invite them forward, that we would consider, there's the possibility of considering the removal from the exempt bylaw. Could they come in and explain the services and what they do? I think that would be worthwhile. I mean,
yeah, their current exemption is $8,800, the threshold of 5, so now they're going to be impacted by $3,800 a year they will be required to pay. And so your motion of an amendment is that they would be removed completely?
yeah, I'd like to know if they're competing directly with the private sector who's paying full taxes in the city. We got to be somewhat cautious there as an organization.
But I think that's the...
Maybe they're not, and that's what I'd like to hear from them, so.
But the way to get that is that we would remove them from the list, provide direction. That's what we've done with the ARC.
Yeah.
Okay, let's remove Peace Region Internet Society from the exemption.
We're considering.
We're considering, yes. Right? Yeah. Direction. Seconder? Councillor Kemp, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Thank you. Anything else?
Well, this has been easy so far.
Yeah. And so we've got number 7. 8. Councillor Earl?
Do we move 7
Oh,
as
Brenda?
amended?
Sorry.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, sorry.
I didn't get the main motion. Now the main motion on 7. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And 8, have you moved?
I'll move 8, yes.
Second? Councillor Javetkov? That staff be directed to inform all the organizations about the decisions regarding it and attend the next council meetings for delegation within, or delegation within the next first quarter. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Duncan, Flavia, and Brenda, and everybody involved in that. This is a significant change in our revenue, and it's going to have some, obviously, a lot of work attached to it yet. Duncan?
And through your worship, just one thing that is kind of surfaced throughout the discussion is around rentals and vacant properties. And if at some point council in the future is going to consider not excluding rentals for other purposes or vacant property, at some point, maybe not right now, but you may want to provide that notification as a policy change, allowing the groups to speak to council. And I'm just gauging, just from some of the discussion, there seemed to be some concern saying, well, if it's a rental, it's not primary and it shouldn't be exempt, or etc. You may, if you are considering a global policy change such as that, you may want to provide notice at some point if you're going there. I don't know if council's going there.
Good. Thank you. Bylaws? Anything, Brenda?
No bylaws this meeting.
Thank you. Mayor's business, so quickly, it was a quiet time over the holidays. Just before Christmas, got a call from Triple J Pipelines, and these guys through the staff and some of the business partners come up, and a little bit of a opportunity they developed within Triple J. They raised $10,000, I think, and provided a check to the Salvation Army, along with a trailer load of food and toys and things, and so really a great initiative, as Christmas time does throughout the community. And these guys really went above and beyond and completely out of the blue for Salvation Army, who were more than appreciative of their efforts. Peace Country Beef Congress, Councillor Earl mentioned earlier, attended on my behalf. I was trapped in Prince for a day, and so thank you for doing that. The Caribou meetings, and so we attended the leaders table meetings in November, December timeframe. We've had some follow-up contact just last week with the folks within the ministries of starting to try to move forward some of the work around the Caribou and the backcountry access, the partnership, the industry, socioeconomic side of it, as well as the Caribou recovery teams. And so they're working on scheduling some meetings, and have reached out to all of us that were involved from local government, Chatwin, Tumbler, myself, Fort St. John, Peace River Regional District, and begin that process of trying to schedule some meetings. And we're in the process of trying to get that set up for hopefully next week. And we just had some conversations late last week about that. I know Blair's been actively involved in that as the Premier's liaison on that. So anyway, it's moving its way forward, and we'll continue to keep folks apprised and updated on kind of what and how that moves forward in the coming weeks and months. 9-2, during the 2017 World Under 17 Hockey Challenge, we had the banners up around town, and we had some requests from some of the parents that were here that asked if they could have the banners. And once we're done with them, we take them down, and they're really not much use. And so we were sending them out to some of the parents who were interested in it. We had that same request this time, and so we've started to collect a list of parents who have, or kids that were participating in the tournament. And so once we take them down, I just wanted to ask council's permission that we be given the authority to send them out to those parents whose kids were here participating in the tournament. We've had some Team Canada kids, as well as had a contact from some Team USA and Team Russia, who have expressed some interest in receiving one of the banners. And so I just would look for council's okay for us to do that. Councillor Kemp, second Councillor Earl. Discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Kemp.
I was going to ask how many banners there are.
I honestly don't know, Duncan?
So there's about 128 banners, I think is the number. Half of the banners are good, and we will leave them up. They're just a generic, welcome you, etc. The other half is event specific. We'll be replacing those in June with the next event once it's announced.
So, and it's a real nice message, I think, to be able to share them with the kids and the parents as a keepsake for the event. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Just before Christmas, I got a call from Brian Levers, and the frac trucks were going to be in town. They had about a 2-week job they were going to be starting, and asked about truck parking again, and where we wanted them, where we didn't want them. And so we said, look, there's areas, obviously we don't want them staying away from the access road in front of Tim Hortons, McDonald's, the brick along that access road. And then there's some no parking zones where council have directed that over by the school bus garage. But I said, but the other thing I've always talked about is in the wintertime to make use of that area east of the event center, Lakota Center, in that open area. And so it looked like it was going to be warm, so we said don't use it, but miscommunication. Anyway, they utilized the property, and from my perspective, I think it's a really good use of that during a temporary purpose. It keeps them off our streets. It keeps from congesting the traffic, wear and tear on our streets. And so I think it's an option that we should be looking at in terms of developing it. I did talk to some of the mat companies, because sometimes those old mats, when they're done with them, they just dispose of them. They're not of much value. But I asked them if we could excavate some of that area where they traditionally in the summer months where they park the RVs for the rodeo, that if we excavated that, put some mats down and put a little bit of gravel down, it would save then the wear and tear of it, and plus it makes it a better long-term use. Anyway, I want to raise it for council's attention, awareness right now that that's what took place. That's how they ended up there. We didn't give them permission, but it was a discussion, and now the job's over, so I don't think they're using it anymore, or virtually it's just about completed. So. Question, Councillor Lexter?
Your Worship, on that issue, and I think anybody that drove by seeing the trucks there, I'm going to guess that there's been no impact on that, or they'd be responsible to fix it up, not the taxpayers of Dawson Creek.
Yeah.
The concern I have with that thought of doing that, though, is I think we have private sector people in our city that have possible parking options for trucks. If I understand, behind the Pomeroy, there's truck parking there and so on. If we as a city, we don't want to put ourselves in a position of competing against the taxpayer with city property. That just, it concerns me. So I think we've got to really think this through, and the next frac job, maybe there is people that have land available. They would charge Encana for this. I'm going to guess that Encana, I don't know if they paid the city for the use of this, or?
No, and so we didn't give them permission, Blair, to use it. I said, is that an option that you guys would consider? And they said, yeah, but, and then I talked to administration about it. It was going to be warm, so we said don't use it, but there was a miscommunication that took place and they used it. So anyway, and I completely agree with you in terms of the aspect of the private, but it's my understanding that the Pomeroy, my understanding was they were only if they were staying there, and these guys don't stay, right? They're in their things. But we can explore that with them. It was an option to me to keep them off our streets, was why I looked at that vacant area.
As long as we pursue that, we're not going to have to, if we do this, we're not competing with somebody who said, geez, I lost work, I lost opportunity to house people or whatever.
Sure.
So, okay.
So we will follow it up, and I'll follow it up with the hoteliers and those guys down there, and get their feedback on it as well, and talk to Encana about, and it wasn't really Encana that were using it, it was facilitating it on behalf of the sand company that were hauling the sand, Source Energy, I think is the sand company. Anyway, I wanted to bring it up for your guys' attention and give you that, how it transpired. Delegation requests, both the Coral Society has was not able to be here today, and we've dealt with the society, the Milesville Park Society of the Sedating Hall, and so we don't have either one of those issues in front of us because they've already been dealt with. I just want to touch base very quickly on the trip to Prince George, because I did go down to Prince George on Friday, and I met with Northern Health and TransCanada, and Northern Health was just about hospital plans. We're hoping to see that announcement come very quickly, and some of the interactions for us in Northern Health in regards to our health society and some of the services like that. So I wanted to meet with Kathy Ulrich, which I did on Friday morning. I also met with TransCanada. The TransCanada are going to be building as part of the coastal, the compressor site at Wild Lake. It's going to be a fairly significant contract that they're going to award very quickly. Probably 400 or 500 people, 6-7 months of construction, 8 months. And so I met with them when I was in Calgary about 2 months ago, I think before Christmas, and I really re-emphasized the point that we want these guys in our community. We don't want them popping them into a camp, using our hotels, using our rental accommodation. And I met with Kyle and we just reinforced that again on Friday with them, because they've had some issues with the camps in Chetwynd as it relates to coastal in terms of how they're facilitating that. And I just wanted to make sure that we stay on that point with them, that look, we want you guys supporting our community when you have this major project going on, and the Groundbirch compressor site at Wild Lake will be a major construction project, and I want them supporting our community. Any questions? Anybody? Councillor Lexman?
Their response to that, Your Worship, did they give us a commitment?
Yeah, no, so they said we're absolutely committed to certainly all of our engineering, our management staff that are going to be on the project. There'll be 50 to 100 of them at any point. They will for sure be in town, and they're working on the facilitation. And they said, we can't really tell you what's going to happen, because whoever gets the contract for the construction will be the ones that will make those wherever they're located. If they're located from Dawson or Fort St. John, Triple J as an example, they're an in-town company, so they're probably, their accommodation needs would be different than if it was Midwest, Bannister, or somebody like that that's coming from out of town. So I'm trying to stay on their radar about, you guys support our community. And
all right, thanks.
Diary? Duncan?
Nothing to update, Your Worship.
Consent calendar? Motion to receive consent? Councillor Earl, Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Strategic priorities?
Nothing to update, Your Worship.
Media? Thank you. Motion to recess to close, please. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Javetkov, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we'll take 5 minutes and get ready for close. Meeting, and now move to our 1 o'clock delegation. And we have Urban Systems, Katrin, and then are here to give us zoning amendment, zoning bylaw workshop. Good afternoon, ladies. Delegation table's yours. Thanks for coming down on a chilly day.
Better if you had an office in Dawson.
Days like this, it is tempting. Thanks. Thank you again for letting us be here today. Again, my name is Emma Greendale, and this is Katrin Saxty from the Fort St. John office with Urban Systems. So this is our 4th council workshop with the draft zoning bylaw. I think I have the dates in here of the last 2 we've done. We had a council workshop in February and May for this project. And then the first one that we did have was a 101 workshop on just overviewing what a zoning bylaw actually is and how it will be used in the city moving forward. So our outline for the day is to update you guys on the project so far, the issues that we had talked about in the previous council workshops, how we've addressed them within the draft zoning bylaw, cover some of the next steps for the project and the approval process and the last round of engagement, and cover any questions that council may have. And so just to reiterate for this project too, we've talked about it a couple times in this project, but The zoning bylaw is just one tool that the city has in the toolbox as far as land use regulation. And it won't resolve every issue every time. The point of the bylaw is to create a document that'll work for the majority of the city and resolve most of the issues that the city is facing. Another thing too is that this bylaw will resolve issues moving forward, but any current issues that the city is facing in terms of land use planning unfortunately will be grandfathered in through this project. And just to reiterate too, that we'll come back to these, but there's other tools that the city has, including the building code, business license bylaw, and the mobile home park bylaw, and development variance permits. So we'll speak to those as they arise, kind of for each section.
The other thing too, just to add, is, all of the work that we've done with you guys and with staff and with the public has come from the direction that we were given through the proposal. So it was really to create a zoning bylaw that's modern, up-to-date, user-friendly. I don't think, and I don't know when the last time was that your current bylaw had been really unpacked and looked at comprehensively. So that was one of the key focuses of this exercise. Also to implement the OCP, which was adopted back in 2018. Feels like yesterday, it's not. And then also to ensure that the bylaw is set up so that there's consistent, clear regulations and things aren't contradicted in one section from another and things like that. So it's really easy for yourselves, staff, the public, anybody to navigate the bylaw.
Yeah, thanks, Katrin. Yeah, going off that, trying to make a bylaw that is really simple for the public to understand and really easy to implement and flexible, that allows people to do within reason what they want to on their property. So the project timeline, the project was broken down into 4 phases, so we've moved that arrow every time we've seen you guys. So we're at the end of the 3rd phase of actually preparing the draft bylaw and hopefully moving forward to the approvals phase. And so just in terms of timelines, the timeline was paused due to elections in October 2018, correct? Thank you. And then other pieces were undertaken then. As Katrin mentioned, the development guidelines were done then. The initial round of workshops that we did with the public were almost exactly last year, January 29th and 30th last year. And then we met with council, like I said earlier, in February and May of last year. That was our 2nd and our 3rd workshops. And so there's been just a few transitions and things over since May till now, in addition to actually writing the bylaw. But we're hoping that can wrap up the project fairly quickly after. And so the purpose for today, there's just a couple outstanding questions that we have that we'd like direction from council on. Otherwise, it's more informing you guys on how we've taken what the direction council has said and implemented in the issues that we had previously identified. So these topic areas should be nothing new. These are what we've covered in the last couple of council meetings as well too. So again, talking about regulations around bed and breakfast and rooming houses, just trying to clean those up and reduce some of the definitions that we had for rooming house specifically. We're going to talk about suites and including in there attached suites and detached suites. We're going to talk about some of the new implementation we've done for off-street parking and some of the new parking regulations, especially for those first 2 points, as well as home occupations. And then we'll talk about home occupations and what we've done in terms of updating regulations, just going over some of the new definitions that have been added, and same thing with permitted uses, and we've cleaned up some of the permitted uses in many of the zones, and again, just kind of making them more flexible and broad rather than quite prescriptive and specific. We'll talk briefly about urban agriculture and food security. Not much has changed on that since the last time we saw you, just to reiterate that. And then we'll talk about the development permit area guidelines, that other document that we've been writing that connects back to the OCP, and just cover some of the last miscellaneous topics, and then talk about next steps. So the first one is short-term accommodation. So the issue with the current bylaw was that there was no clear definitions or regulations around short-term accommodation. What we've done moving forward is we actually haven't changed too much around short-term accommodation. The reasoning for that is that currently there's no provincial legislation around short-term rentals, but it is anticipated there's it will be coming forward in the future. So we didn't want to preemptively write any regulations that would potentially contradict anything that the province came out with later. And so our plan, working with staff, was to press pause on this, wait to see what the province comes out with, and then if the city does would request further regulations around short-term accommodations, to update that based on the direction provided by the province. We've also just provided some clarity around short-term accommodations. So we've kind of separated the tourist accommodations. We've done that all through the bed and breakfast regulation section. And then the short-term rental rooming house sort of issue. We've updated the rooming house definition and removed the boarding house definition, and provided some clarity around there, and again updated the parking regulations. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the rooming house section. But we've provided some distinction there so that hopefully there's no area left. Short-term accommodation is either covered off by one of the two of them. And so we'll get into this later too, but I just wanted to reiterate that currently Airbnbs aren't permitted in the city of Dawson Creek in the current zoning bylaw. We do know that there are a few of them existing in the city, but as far as our understanding and staff's understanding, there haven't been any issues with them. So we've just stayed silent on that matter. And then if there are to be issues that pop up, then that can be resolved when the provincial legislation comes out. But again, as soon as we permit short-term rentals, they may crop up more and more, and we may start to see an issue with them. Okay. So most of that is covered in the bed and breakfast. Some of the regulations that we've added or updated is that the operator of the bed and breakfast shall permanently reside in the same building as the bed and breakfast guests. We've updated the parking so that, I don't know if it's listed on these on the parking spots, but there must be a parking spot for each let bedroom, and that the owner of the bed and breakfast is required to hold a valid business license with the city. Again, talking about some of the other tools that the city has to implement these.
And it's just building off of, this is just building off of what you guys already have in your current bylaw too, so this isn't anything new.
Yeah. And so for rooming house, again, like I mentioned earlier, we cleaned up the definition for rooming house. So we just have one definition of rooming house, not including a group residence or a community care facility. So what we have done is we've removed the definition of rooming house as a permitted use from the residential zones. So currently, there are no more rooming houses allowed in residential zones moving forward. We have permitted them in the C2, which is general commercial, and C4, which is highway commercial zones. But we have added regulations for both C zones and R zones. So the C zone, commercial zone, saying that the owner of the rooming house is required to hold a business license with the city. Again, tying back to that business license aspect. And for existing rooming houses in R zones, that they will only be allowed to be moving forward in single detached dwellings. We have a maximum capacity of 8 patrons, and again, that the owner of the rooming house will be required to hold a valid business license with the city. And again, that's for existing rooming houses only.
Yeah, so the existing rooming houses in your R zones are grandfathered in, but one of the things that we've done in this bylaw and working closely with staff was really putting in parking requirements, because we hear that's the issue. It's not necessarily having people there, it's the excessive parking and everything like that. So while we recognize that we've heard that you don't want them in residential areas, but the fact is some of them are there right now. We're not going to be able to do anything about those. But what we can do is put in regulations that enable you to have some of the enforcement tools, in this case parking, available, so that when there is a complaint, you've got something that you can go and enforce the issues that are the problem, which we've heard is the parking. So again, it won't rectify it, but it'll give you some tools to at least go when an issue does come up, or somebody, complains to the city, hey, this is going on. They're grandfathered in. That's unfortunately the reality that we have to deal with, but hopefully we can minimize the impact of those existing ones, the parking impact that we've heard about. And in the future, the idea is that, if these kinds of establishments are to occur, the city would like to have them located in commercial zones, because they are very much a commercial type of enterprise.
Question, and I'm not sure if it's for you guys or to administration, but as you've indicated, Katrina, it's a commercial enterprise, and so when you have the intensity of perhaps 6 or 8 individuals living in there, traditionally workers, and so there's some intensity attached to waste as well, in my view, in terms of when we've seen that in the past, where waste collection and they have a single container. So can we put something into the regulation that says this, as it's not normal waste collection that we would have in a single family residential home, but so could we impose within the zoning that they must now have commercial waste capacity to ensure that they don't overwhelm the yard and or that single or double container? Could we put that as a condition under the bylaw that they must have commercial waste collection capability?
So through your worship, through our solid waste and recycling bylaw, for lack of knowing exactly what it's called, we have some specifics that say, you know, every residential house will have will subscribe, and I think in case of commercial, we've allowed them either to subscribe or to have their own on-site. That would be the place where you'd say, and in regards to commercial, if you have a rooming house, you need to have an actual bin or multiple. We could probably correct it best through there as opposed to the zone. So the tool's there, we just have to update it.
Yeah, and I guess I've seen it where we've had the complaints about people who are saying, look, and it does make kind of sense. If you got 6 or 8 workers in there, the amount of waste they're generating is different, and so if they got 4 rooms they're renting, then do we say to them, okay, you got to have 4 waste receptacles, or I'm just saying let's ensure they deal with it.
And I would be inclined to go with what you said. Like, I don't believe the zoning bylaw is the correct place for it because it speaks to land use and density. That's the tool. That's what it is regulating, but in conjunction with the other tools that you have, absolutely.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if that's why my question was, I wasn't sure if it was going to Duncan or to you guys about it, but it's a point to me that we should be addressing.
Sure. Through your worship, through that bylaw, you can address any home or any building that's going to have multiple occupants in it. So if it's going to be a rooming house or suites, you may require more than one utility account with us or something along those lines. So you could do that through that bylaw. We can take a look at it.
Good, thanks. Councillor Lexon.
Just a quick one. Under this, so the R zone, I get whether, and don't have it in front of me, RM2 or what would a fourplex fall under right now? Would that be a rooming house? Like 4 different apartments rented in one building? I mean, I'm just thinking outside, where's that captured?
For sure. A fourplex would be in your multifamily zone, and probably your low and medium density.
I was going to say,
sure.
it's definitely in medium and high density. I think it might be in the low density one too.
Yeah.
So the difference between guest bedrooms, 4, is because it's individual dwelling and not in the same one under a fourplex? Am I mixing this? I just want to...
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So in a fourplex, yeah, you're right. You would have 4 separate dwelling units. And then in a rooming house, you're technically, because there's usually only one kitchen facility, you're sharing one dwelling unit with 4 to 8 roommates, basically. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we will touch on parking, the specific parking regulations in a second on the parking slide. So for suites, so the main issue with the suites was the suites occurring in neighborhoods, and again, parking was the biggest issue, including density. So we've separated the 2 terms for suites as secondary suites, so those will be suites occurring within the principal dwelling unit, and then also detached suites, and those are the coach houses or granny flats or carriage houses occurring on the same parcel but not attached to the principal dwelling. So that'll come into play in a second. But again, we just consolidated the terms and separated them a little bit more clearly. We've closed a lot of the loopholes that came just from having multiple definitions for suites, so that cleaning up the definitions helped a lot with this section in general. And then we have also accommodated 1 suite that can be a recreational vehicle only in industrial zones for security purposes only. So that's something we heard from council and staff, was that there was a request for suites within industrial zones only for those security purposes, and that it was permitted to be a recreational vehicle.
So I think it's also one of the phenomenons we've seen here is we've got these industrial, well, commercial industrial areas with the shops and the businesses, and there are suites contained within those offices now for accommodation for their drivers, and so this goes forward. This doesn't look backwards.
Exactly, yeah. And again, the zoning bylaw enforcement is more driven on a complaint basis too. So that, you know, it might not be permitted in the bylaw, but if you're not seeing issues with it and you're not getting complaints about it, it's
And I think
up to enforcement.
The intent too with what you're saying and what you've seen, right, is the intent is, yes, it absolutely makes sense to have somebody living there from a security perspective, but the industrial areas are not where we want people residing, you know, as their home per se, right? So, yeah.
Just a quick one on that. That could be a recreational vehicle, so a fifth wheel, motorhome, whatever. What do we do to ensure dumping? So it's January, they're sheeted in, they're all there, they aren't hooked up to sewer, I'm pretty sure of that. How do we protect ourselves from on-ground dumping?
I'd have to ask Kevin what we're currently doing. I mean, I don't know that it's an issue that's been raised.
I just think if you're gonna stay in the winter, you're gonna sheet it in and you're not moving these things, so I think we wanna pay attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's RV parks that have winter camping, and I don't know that it's been an issue to date, and I'm not sure what they're doing.
Your worship, a lot of these industrial areas that we see these types of things, they also may be a back truck company, so, you know, a lot of these RVs will go to a portable holding tank.
Okay.
And then they might get them sucked up. We just haven't run across any complaints, and I would assume the landowner wouldn't want them dumping it on their property, so.
I just raised that if it does come up.
We see this happen where they just end up rolling them in a shop for the winter. We have seen that. We have actually experienced that where they just pull it in and keep it indoors, but still have someone living in it.
But I think also though, if you drive around, there are RVs in different areas where you can see they're living in them, and commercial areas.
And we do have a regulation in the bylaw that a recreational vehicle is not a dwelling unit, and it's not permissible to live in, the only exception being this one suite in industrial zones for security purposes.
Good.
And so this is actually, moving forward in suites, this is one section that we did want some direction from council on. So one of the previous directions that we had was for suite rentals, was to have, similarly to the rooming houses and the bed and breakfast and the home occupations, was to have the owner of the suite reside in the principal building. So we just wanted to clarify with council and just raise some pros and cons of that regulation. And I'll just move forward in here too. So whether it be secondary suite or detached suite, and I'm not sure if that makes a difference in council's eyes. But yeah, Katrina, do you want to just speak to the pros and cons a bit about the owners in the suite?
Sure. One of the things that has been done in the past in other jurisdictions, although it's tricky to enforce, and this is the caveat, and even with different law firms reviewing bylaws, you get different opinions. So just, just so that's out there. It sets the intent, right? When we talk about secondary suites or detached suites, the general intent is that the owner of that building is living there as well, and they're renting out their basement for secondary income or whatever it is. So in most cases, you do have the owner living there. But it's really difficult to enforce that. Period, full stop, right there. But the other part of it too is it causes issues where I might own my house, but I also own that house on the other side of town, and I'm renting out, it's a duplex, I'm renting out both units. I no longer live there. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem? When I'm renting out I've got two long-term tenants, and I'm renting out both sides of my duplex, right? So having something where the owner is mandated to reside in the dwelling unit, while it will work probably for most people, there are situations where it's going to cause more headaches. And so we wanted to revisit this. So that's one example. I own another building and I'm renting out another home. Property management firms, right? They have rentals all over the place. Houses, apartments, townhouses, they're renting up and down, side by side. They don't reside there. Airbnbs. Sometimes it's a room in a house where the owner lives there. Sometimes it's the whole house, which seems to be more common. I don't know, I've never stayed in one. Right, and so we wanted to just revisit that and really get some clarity, some clear direction on something that is, again, it's tricky to enforce, but it does resonate with many people, but not all people. And for the ones where it's a problem, it actually could be a really big problem. So we really wanted to get some direction in terms of where council lands with wanting to require the owner to reside in the principal dwelling if they're renting something out. Does that make sense?
Councillor Javetkov and Councillor Lexstrom.
It doesn't make sense to require the owner to live there, to me. I mean, we've got duplexes in town here. Doug Scott has a whole number of them. And he lives in his own house and he rents them all out. That's just the way of doing business. I don't see why we would try and change their methods of investing and in real estate and stuff like that. It wouldn't make sense to me.
Blair?
I guess just, and you confused me with the duplex comment. So if I own a duplex, I can rent out both sides. I don't have to reside in one side to rent the other side. Did I hear you say I would have to under this?
That was one of the...
It's an example.
It's an example.
Right.
Yeah, or say you owned a duplex and you live in another single-family dwelling, and you chose to rent, say, all 4 units of the duplex. That, I mean, one, we could either write a regulation not permitting that, or we can say silent on it and then permitting it.
Yeah, and just to, if I can jump in really quickly, I know this arose from a number of the issues that have occurred in the past where you had tremendous investment in the community, but the investment was external. So there was no local presence, right, for all of these dwelling units that were being rented out all over the place. And so that's kind of, I think, where some of the conversation came from to try and combat that. I don't know how much of an issue that still is today. And again, just really wanted to highlight, like, if something like this then does get incorporated into the bylaw, it might pose some unintended consequences, which is what we are trying to avoid.
Could it be taken to the next step, an apartment building? Would the owner have to reside in there to rent out the other suites?
No.
So, okay.
I mean, it would be specific to where you would want to put it, if you even want to incorporate it.
Okay. I mean, I would think our fourplexes and duplexes, you shouldn't need to live in one side to rent the others.
But the model, I think that what we have today, the single-family homes with suites in them, are
You want the
traditionally...
owner.
No, they're traditionally not occupied right now by the owner.
Okay.
That would be my gut assumption. And I guess I'd ask Kevin and Peter or...
The duplexes up 17th Street technically have secondary suites in them. And so
But the homes, like all the homes that are built with suites in them, Kylie stuff is all non-owner occupied.
We beat this up a lot over the last. We've heard, like Katrin mentions, we did hear through conversation, at least a thought that maybe we could look at having the owners in, but the more we explore that, the more we see the challenges with it as well. Because I just don't believe it's realistic to think that you're going to have the owners in all these homes with suites. And it was really around the suites, coach house and stuff, not so much the duplex or apartments. We're talking more about the suites and coach house issue. Where we've landed and we're putting in front of you is really saying, no, you don't have to have the owner live there. But what you do need to do is you'll have to have a business license if you're running it as a rental. What that enables is if there is an issue, through that business license, we'll have a point of contact that we can reach out to. And I believe that's probably the bigger concern for all of us, is to make sure if there's garbage or there's parking, hey, we can pick up a phone, we can get a hold of somebody that can deal with it. So that's where it is right now. We haven't included that regulation, but what I said to Katrin and Emma was that because we kind of heard it and we've gone back and forth, I think it was worth at least mentioning that we had heard it, but we believe it's very problematic.
Bet you wish you wouldn't have. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Worship. So for me, the secondary suites, the issues, to the extent that there are issues with the secondary suites, are the same as they are with the rooming houses. It's just more parking. So whether or not the owner lives on site and uses it as a source of supplementary income, or whether it's run by an investor who's looking at it strictly as an investment, isn't as important to me as making sure that it isn't creating the same issues we have with rooming houses. So, yeah.
Thank you.
For sure. And I mentioned, Katrina and I have talked about this too, that, you know, because we have dealt with the rooming house issues in residential zones, I would hesitate to kind of overcorrect this issue at the sake of economic flexibility. And so for secondary, so great, thank you so much for that direction.
So just to be clear, just to close that loop, then and be explicitly clear, we will not include language in the bylaw that requires the owner to reside in the suites.
I think that's my view, and certainly I think that's what council have said.
We would still retain if they don't reside, that they have to have a business license,
yes,
correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yes, that's in there. That's already in there.
Good.
Yep.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you.
So the last point I just wanted to bring to your attention for secondary suites is where they're located. So we heard from the public that there was a request or a desire to have a single unit dwelling zone without secondary suites specifically, just to retain that sort of single family low density nature. So we've permitted them in agriculture as an accessory use. These are all accessory uses. And then in RS2, RS3, RM1, RM2, and RM3. So those are the multifamily zones and the higher density single family zones.
So the only RS1 they're excluded from, and that's the single zone that they would be excluded from.
Correct. So detached suites, there's not, again, too much to say on this one beyond, again, we'll address parking in a second. And again, thank you for the direction for the owner of the suite, and so we'll add that into this. Again, just where they're located. They're not, we haven't permitted them in the agricultural zone. That's due to some of the ALC legislation that's come up of the number of dwellings permitted on ALC parcels, or ALR parcels, sorry.
And not even so much dwellings or dwelling units. The ALC has no issues with the secondary suite, a suite contained in your home. Where they're really kind of clamping down, if you will, is on any other detached dwelling unit. And so you can still do that, but you need to apply to the ALC for a non-adhering residential permit, basically. You need to apply in order to have that allowed. So it didn't, I mean, we could permit it, but then if anybody who lives in the ag zone wants that, they would still have to apply to the ALC to actually do that, right?
And one of the purposes of that is just due to the size of the parcels for most ag lands. They don't really see it as a suite, they see it as a second dwelling unit.
Yeah.
And I think the development that occurs in our community is not on agriculture land. It's they're keeping it agriculture just for the purposes of undeveloped tax purposes. The minute they want to start developing it, they're swinging it to a commercial and whatever, residential. So we have very little of that impact, I would think.
For sure. And then, so they are detached suites, and those being those carriage suites are permitted. This is moving the current zoning bylaw forward in all of the R zones. And that's just to, including the RS1. And that's just to ensure that we don't have any legally non-conforming detached suites. Okay, so off-street parking. So we are looking for direction from council on one more area around off-street parking. So we'll start with that one. So we have done quite a bit of work in the off-street parking section, as kind of mentioned earlier. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the parking space dimensions. So currently the bylaw has parking space dimensions of 2.7 by 5.5 meters, and I think it's really that length that everyone is concerned about, the 5.5 meters in length. Previously, I think it was our second council workshop, so the first one specifically about the bylaw.
Could be.
That we
was one of them.
We had asked council about the parking length size, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but the direction we got was around 7.5 meters. So we've been back and forth on this with staff as well too, and done a lot of truck length calculations. And so we have I think staff requested 6.5 meters, and in the bylaw, we've written 7 meters to split the difference between council and staff. Just to give you some information on truck lengths.
We're all about compromise.
Yeah. So I've done some quick Googling, and so an F-150 with a crew cab is 6.3 meters, and an F-350 with a crew cab long box is 6.7 meters. So that's the longest truck we're gonna see without a trailer attached to it. So the 7.5 meters might start to be a little bit prohibitive in terms of providing number of parking spaces, especially since we are requesting that the number of parking spaces in a lot of different uses increase. Yeah, so just wanted to see if there was any conversation about that, how you guys feel about the 7 meters, the 7 meter length.
Just a quick question through to admit, what's our setback for dwellings?
So we're actually, I don't know if I'll talk about it, but we are looking at changing that to 7.5 meters for property line. We had reduced it back in 2013 or whatever it was in the previous zoning to 5.5 in residentials.
Yeah, because this
So
could
that's short
potentially allow for no I guess, front parking, unless you're gonna be flat against your house, but.
But
right?
then, so even with the setback of 5.5,
Yeah.
you've also got a boulevard area that is your driveway right.
Yeah.
Sits within, and that's usually
1.5?
4 meters as well. So
That
you do
much?
that. But
Okay.
what we found is reverting back to 7.5 meter setback just provides more room. You can get a couple people or a couple vehicles stacked in there. You don't have them hanging over the sidewalk or in the street. So
Okay.
we are looking at that.
And again, this would be for new developments moving forward,
Yeah.
right? So the existing is existing, that's the way it is. It's for anybody who were to come in after this bylaw were to be adopted.
Unless we go with the business license on a rooming house and the parking we require, we could make it count under this then, could we not? Like, are we not gonna, I know we can't go retroactive, I know what you're saying there. But if we're gonna impose regulations outside of your zone, what you were dealing with here, they have to adhere to those as well. So we could force their hand, although this has to be for, I'll say for new builds. If somebody takes a position that they want to become a rooming house and they meet all the requirements, but they've gotta meet a parking requirement, they would meet our new standard, even though it's an old house. Would that not be right?
If it's a new
Yeah.
use, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So any issues with the 7 meter?
Councillor Jabecko?
So Kevin, when you're talking about 7.5 meter setback, does that include front steps or is that the wall of the building?
That's the wall, so that would be, typically if your garage sits out in front of your house, it's from the face of that garage to the property line is minimum 7.5, and then you've got a little bit more until you get to the curb, and that's usually another 3 to 5 meters.
You know, with that setback, 7 meters is reasonable. I was just worried about the 5.5 meter.
No, we wouldn't do one
sure.
without doing the other. That was something we were very much aware of.
Great, and then so just to Katrina's point, just to reiterate fully that 7.
You're good.
7 meters?
You're
Okay,
good.
thank you. Thanks. So just to reiterate some of the other parking changes, that this is for the number of parkings. So single detached dwellings, duplexes, semi-attached, triplex, and fourplex dwelling units, all we have require 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. So that means like a duplex would have 4 parking spaces required. Apartments and townhomes have 1 per bedroom, up to a maximum of 2, and an additional visitor spaces representing 15% of the total number of dwelling units. Suites to 1 per bedroom, up to a maximum of 2, in addition to the required spaces for the single detached dwelling on the same parcel. Home occupation, 1 per each home occupation, or sorry, 1 per home occupation, in addition to the requirement for the principal dwelling unit. Rooming houses for residential, 1 per guest bedroom in addition to the required spaces for the principal dwelling unit. And then for commercial, 1 per bed.
How do we address the curb to, or property line to property line so they're not parking the entire front where we have that green space requirement within there as well?
Through your worship, our intent is through the business license that they submit a parking plan, in particular for some of those higher density use, to be approved, and something we're gonna have to do a little bit of work on and make sure council's on board is that it isn't acceptable to park on the front yard. All right, so that would be through the business license.
Thanks.
Okay, great. So universal access design. So we had, do we have someone? Sorry, I forget his name.
Yeah, we had actually a fellow by the name of Stan Leyenhorst. He is a quadriplegic, and he is doing a lot of consulting work to review things such as these kinds of bylaws to make sure that they are universally accessible and that the regulations and the language that's in them is to enable parking and accessibility for all users. And so he did review the bylaw for us and provided just a few little tweaks to basically align with current best practices.
And most of those came into play in the parking section too. So again, just updating the accessible parking regulations to meet that best practice. And also adding the regulation that accessible parking stalls be identified with a sign, as well as on-ground painting.
Just a quick question on accessible parking. So we're not talking about the suites and all of that we're going through here, just so that there's no requirement under that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, correct. Yes, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, this mostly comes into play in the commercial zones. So home occupation, again, previously the bylaw had different uses of home occupation and live work. And again, so we've, cleaning up the definitions has helped clean up a lot of the issues around that. We have updated, again, the parking, like I said previously, to reflect that if a homeowner is doing a home occupation, they have to have an additional parking space for that home occupation. And just cleaning up and actually more so than cleaning up, expanding the number of businesses that can be done through home occupations. And again, most of those low impact sort of businesses were explored. Yes?
Quick question on that. So home occupation, can it be a pilot car service? And I mean, one jumps out at me. I drive by it quite often where there's 8 vehicles there every day. So can that be a home occupation under our?
Well, you've got the parking requirements, and I think we had something, I think we've got something in the bylaw that speaks to, home occupation isn't to provide, like, you can't have a whole bunch of vehicles on your property as part of your business.
I think we'll double check it, but I know that we did permit delivery vehicles, things like skip the dishes, and
that's right.
We allowed that as one of the services, but I'm pretty sure we don't allow a storage of vehicles or no.
Yeah, it's not a storage. This would be, there's probably more vehicles than there is bedrooms in the place I'm thinking of, and you see it. So I'm just curious, are we addressing that issue? Because for me, it doesn't seem to make sense. It's a residential duplex is what it is. And all of a sudden, there's 8 pilot cars there every night. So how do we prevent that?
I'm making a note of it, but I think we addressed it.
And again, with the home
and they do a good job. The ones I'm talking about, I mean, do a reasonable job. They don't, but it's something we want to make sure we're covering.
For sure.
Now, we dealt with this when we had the first aid vehicles, and there was and those vehicles defined or used as commercial purposes. We restrict the number of. I thought that was the issue there.
Yeah, there's something that indicates you.
Vehicles over a certain weight are restricted in residential.
Yes. Yes. And that holds in this
one. Isn't there 1 per home or 2 per home or something along those lines per residence, I thought, on the street here maybe? We'd have to look into that, but it only becomes an issue if they're not living in there, right? If they're only dropping them off and going somewhere else. If they're actually living in the home, then you have parking requirements and beds and all those other pieces. So you should be covered there. If they're just dropping them off and then going to a house somewhere else, that's where you'd run into.
So if it's a duplex, and there's 3 bedrooms in each duplex, so you got 6 bedrooms, and you're required to have an off-street parking for each bedroom?
Two
Two
off-street parking.
So they would be then required, if they're used in that situation, they would be required to have 6 parking spots per unit.
Sorry, it's 2 off-street
per
parking spaces for
unit.
each dwelling, so there'd be 4.
Oh, 4 in total?
Yeah,
Okay.
4 in
For the
total
entire duplex, yeah.
But if they had 6 rooms and had 6 occupants, they could have 6 vehicles, so we're still saying 2 on the street's fine?
Well, we have to be conscious that the parking regulations in the zoning bylaw deal with off-street parking. Any of your on-street parking is dealt with through your traffic bylaw. So they're 2 very separate bylaws that, and I'm not sure what the regulations are actually in your traffic bylaw.
Says they have to move every 24 hours?
Yeah.
And so, just through your worship, one of the challenges you have, and again, this will even go back as far as the residential development committee that was 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever that was.
6 years ago?
Is you have to find a balance of how much parking you need to require. Because although our most recent history will show us that yes, we've had some parking challenges, because yes, every bedroom in a duplex is full of a worker, it's not always the case. And so how do you find the balance of saying, well, you need 6 parking spots for that, which means now you need a much larger parcel, which now drives costs on that whole development side. And so it's tough. And these regulations are more onerous than what our previous ones are, but are they as much as they could be? No. And so, but if council wants to look at changing that, you can, but we'll just let you know what that potentially means as far as implications.
And the regulations too that we have in here, they're in alignment with what you find in, a lot of other communities. And I've lived up here long enough, I don't look at the south, so just. So it is kind of, I don't want to say sort of standardized. Some of these things are, especially when you get to parking at like a minimum of 2. This is what makes sense for single family homes and each side of a duplex and townhouses and that kind of thing, right? And also given our realities. The other thing I will say is that the parking requirements are what I've just said. It's a minimum. So if somebody has the ability, they know they want to, they're going to rent out their 3 bedrooms and they have the space, there's nothing stopping them from putting in more off-street parking. Whether or not they do it, that remains to be seen, but it's a minimum requirement.
And sorry, just bringing you back to home occupations, I want to reiterate too that there is a comprehensive list of the types of occupations that are allowed for home occupation. And so we've got a few of them up there: accountant, artist, barber, beautician, financial advisor, massage therapist, tax consultant, other pretty similar low impact occupations. And so if they don't fall under one of those, they're not expressly permitted as a home occupation. But that's a good, we'll double check on that. So definitions for the bylaw, again, as I said earlier, a lot of it was just modernizing and removing some non-essential definitions, such as that coach house, escort service, some service uses. I think there was a telephone exchange in there. I had to ask Katrin what that was. And so we've added just a couple for clarity, too. One being brewery, dwelling unit, financial institution, some things that are already existing, but just to make sure that we have a definition in there for clarity. And as we've seen instances of earlier, consolidating the multiple definitions, things like rooming house versus boarding house, putting them together to one definition to reduce some of those loopholes.
Especially when your current bylaw, you have a definition for rooming house and one for rooming and boarding house, and both of them have different requirements in the definition. So it's really wide open at that point in terms of what do you use.
Yeah, so closing some of those loops. And then what we've done too is actually incorporated graphics into some of the definitions, especially for a lot of the quantitative dimension sort of definitions. So things like height, things like grade, things like setbacks, we have visual guides for those as well now too. permitted uses. We talked a lot about the permitted uses, especially in the residential zones. But again, we're just updating the permitted uses. A lot of that was actually spent in the commercial zones. So simplifying some of the redundant or really specific uses, such as tailor, shoemaker. There was a huge list of them. Now it's just retail shop. And we've actually been able to streamline some of those zones. So there was a C7 pawn shop zone. There was a neighborhood pub zone that we've removed and just permitted restaurant in the general and highway commercial zones.
And a lot of the conversation really was, where in a commercial area would you not want to have a restaurant? And when you revisit it, you sit there and go, well, actually, we would be fine just about anywhere. So then why do you have a separate zone, right? So that was some of the conversations that we had with staff, is the debates about some of your unique, because I think you had 10 commercial zones when we looked at all of them in its entirety.
So back down to 4?
Yep, 4. Yep.
And then again, just in modernizing the definitions, it updated a lot of the permitted uses because of that. And then, so again, some of the other more institutional zones, just keeping them as broad as possible. We have now changed it to outdoor recreation instead of specifying whether it's a basketball court or a tennis court or a skate park. Then you can have some of the, a tennis court can also be used as a pickleball court. No, it's all outdoor recreation. Urban agriculture and food security. So this was more of a minor update in this one, but we've added the definition for community garden. And then we had heard that some of the beekeeping and the hen keeping had been going well in residential zones. So we did expand that to occur now in commercial and industrial zones as well too. And then we amended, included community garden as permitted use in institutional zones as well as the multifamily zones as an accessory use.
Could you just enlighten me a bit? We expanded the hens and bees to what?
The bees. Or sorry, just the bees. Thank you. The urban hens are now, they're still in just the lower density R zones, the urban hen keeping. And then the urban beekeeping, we expanded to, I think it was just the lower density commercial ones too.
And that's 4 high, we got them tagged to the maximum, I'm guessing, of what they're allowed to.
That will be whatever's in the beekeeping.
I'm not a big supporter of bees in residential areas, regardless of what people say.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I don't like them. If one stung me, my neighbor would be short a bunch of bees. I can tell you.
Those are nice bees. They don't.
Those are, that's good. It's the bad bees I'm looking.
Okay. Don't get him started.
Yeah, well,
don't get him started.
Glad we finally got to this issue.
I couldn't wait.
All right.
Perfect. So actually, Katrina, do you want to speak to this, the development permit area guidelines?
So when we worked with you and your staff on the official community plan, one of the things that came up during that process and was identified was to revisit and look at the development permit area guidelines that you had in place and that were attached to that particular OCP. One of the trends and one of the things that we've seen over the years is that development permit area guidelines, they're a set of guidelines that can be applied at staff's discretion. It's a flexible document. And so it's applied for development in identified areas. And one of the things that we found is when somebody goes to develop, they don't really look at the OCP. I hate to say it, I like OCPs. They look at the zoning bylaw because that has all of your other development-related regulations. So one of the, I guess, strategic decisions that we chatted about and did at that time was the OCP has to identify the development permit areas and justify them, but your actual guidelines, the actual things that you're looking for people to do can be attached to either the OCP or the zoning bylaw. So at the time it was decided it makes a lot of sense to attach them to the zoning bylaw. So that project was basically paused until this zoning bylaw review so it could all be done comprehensively. So this is a separate document which will be attached as an appendix to your zoning bylaw. It links directly back to your official community plan, and all of your development permit areas are identified in there. You've got 5 of them: downtown core, commercial development, multifamily, intensive residential, and I should say natural hazard areas. And so we went through with a few staff, we had multiple transitions in this part of the project, that's for sure, to come up with guidelines that met the intent for each of these areas. And a lot of these guidelines deal with form and character and what we want something to look like. It's mostly dealing with commercial areas, which makes a lot of sense, multifamily, intensive residential, and then the natural hazards, which looks at like your floodplains and things like that, steep slopes. So it's a series of guidelines, and what we've chatted about with staff is, depending on the type of development that you have within each of these areas, if it's a small one versus something that's going to take over a whole block, will determine which of the guidelines you're going to ask somebody to implement. And so a lot of these things deal with what something looks like and how it feels, and it's one of the few tools, one of the very few tools that the local government actually has to ask for a little bit more, because you normally can't say, well, we want it to kind of look like this. That's not something that you are able to do under the legislation. However, through a development permit area, you can.
Just a quick question. Under your development permit area guideline implementation, the principles that we look at, so active, vibrant streets, I get that. Maybe we want to look at roundabouts, for example, in our development. I mean, I could see that being built in. The water conservation, give me an example of a design principle based on that.
So things like that would be, considering if you have to have parking islands, say you're doing a larger development with parking islands, use drought-resistant species, or plant plants that don't require a lot of water. It's as simple as some of these things, just to get people to think about it a little bit differently. If you're going to plant something, make it somewhat weatherproof for this kind of stuff. Really thinking through those things so that a year later you don't have a tree that is dehydrated or is frozen to death because it's completely the wrong type of plant.
We're going to make that mandatory? We're going to dictate that they have to?
No, and that's the whole point of guidelines. Here is a list of things. It depends on the nature of your development. It's going to depend if you're on 8th Street or a few blocks further back. It's going to depend. Are you right at the traffic circle? You might actually want to ask for a few more things in, a high visibility perspective. If it's a small sort of neighborhood development that, impact is maybe minimal, you might not ask for much at all. And that's the flexibility that staff has.
Okay. So just some of the other topics that were brought up at least at the beginning of this project. Infill development was one of them. So one of the ideas that had been tossed around at the beginning of the project was creating a zone specifically to accommodate infill development. And so at last year, with our workshops with the development committee, they just didn't see it as a desirable approach. And it was preferred by them to ease development regulations. And I think this is something we've talked about at the last council presentation, is that the zoning bylaw, we have addressed this indirectly by just making some of the regulations a little bit more relaxed. The BC Energy Step Code. So there's an understanding that all buildings in BC, through the BC Energy Step Code, the desire is to have them all net zero energy by 2032. And so we've been in talks with this with city staff, and that the best method of implementation of the step code is actually through the building bylaw. Again, the zoning bylaw deals with land use and the area on parcels, but the actual buildings themselves are regulated through the building bylaw. And so some amendments can be incorporated at time to time, actually through these development permit area guidelines as well too. And other bylaw amendments might be required, but there was not too much specific for the actual zoning bylaw at this time. And for the aviation zones, again, there wasn't a huge desire to change anything with the aviation zones, nor were we seeing any issues with the current aviation zones. We just checked that the heights for the aviation zone were appropriate to other legislation. So we are on that review of city council checkmark. And so the zoning bylaw has been drafted along with the mapping, and we have reviewed it with city staff. So the next steps moving forward are our public engagement round and our referrals with other government agencies, and then moving forward to the bylaw adoption. And so speaking to the public engagement, last year around this time again, we did our first round of public engagement, and we didn't have the turnout we were expecting, possibly due to the weather. Again, what we did hear from the public was what council had reiterated to us too, so that parking was the biggest issue, which we think that we've been able to address in the bylaw as of yet. So what we're planning to do moving forward is actually, Nick has been really involved with the bylaw process and is quite familiar with it too, and so our plan is to have actually a lot of the information that's been on this presentation today available up around City Hall, and having a drop-in time for the public to visit with Nick and to speak through the bylaw, and Nick can go with the public one-on-one. And then we'll get an update from the city on how that's been going. And we also have to have the bylaw referred to a legal review as well too.
So those will be happening simultaneously. So then when we get all that feedback back, we can do one final set of revisions and it will be ready for you guys.
Good. Thank you. Questions, any comments from council? Councillor,
just a quick one on the public engagement. Yes. Are we saying that then they'll come in here if people want to look at it versus? Yeah. The only worry I have there is if people are working and they don't have the opportunity to get there, you want to give them every chance they can. I mean, I can't imagine we're going to have throes of people coming out to an evening meeting, but it's the only concern I have is those that may be interested, that work all day, that might not get the opportunity to come in. So.
Yeah, it's one that we definitely tossed around a little bit because, you know, we did everybody put in a lot of time and effort for that initial engagement, and I think even going back to the OCP, we had so much input, and it's just people, I almost feel like they've like, we've told you what we want, now just go do it. But you're absolutely right, it will limit who is able to come. We did talk with city staff just about making sure it's posted and promoted, so maybe you can come in on your lunch break or at least schedule a time. Do you know what I mean? I know Nick's really available.
But there's also a possibility of doing something on their page, social media to.
Yeah.
And if they got questions, give us a call.
I keep forgetting about that form.
It's just new thing they've started.
It's this new thing, man.
And we can promote that you know, they're free to call Nick or email Nick as well too at their own time.
Yeah.
Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship. So I think I attended both public engagement sessions that were the most recent ones. So there were two the first was in the evening, specifically geared towards realtors, developers, engineers, people who would be very, very involved in the process. Not a great turnout. And then the next day, there's a public one in the theater of the Calvin Crook Center, similarly very anemic turnout. I think zoning is one of those things that zoning is one of those things that people can't be bothered with until it personally impacts their arrangements or their business, and that's where we're challenged. Having said that, I do appreciate the work you guys have done up to this point with intermittent input from various sectors of our community. I know we always hear back from developers that are looking for us to be more friendly and cooperative with respect to their allowing them the latitude to get investors and get people building in our town, and I'm certainly in support of that. And we also have to strike a balance between how our community looks, how our community is to live in, and public safety and stuff. So I think, hope this is a step in the right direction, and I do, if there's anything you need from us with respect to publicizing public engagement, I think it's important that people know what's coming. I think it's important that these changes, especially the kind of relaxing of regulations around development and infill sites, be communicated to developers, because we want to make sure that they understand we are open for business and we're happy to work with them.
Any other comments, questions for council? So thank you guys for, again, getting us one step closer and all the work you put into it. I'll just go back on one point. The opportunity of appeasing either staff or council and getting in the middle there, it's best to appease council. So, that old saying, the boss isn't always right, but he's always the boss. We love that one. Thank you so much for continuing on and getting us one step closer.
For sure.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you so much for all of your guys' insight and comments, and we always enjoy coming here before you and having great discussion. And staff has gone through this bylaw. I've lost count how many versions we have of markups, so Nick particularly, you know, for somebody who's new to the organization, knows it inside out, upside down, and backwards, I think by now. He's asked some really great questions with that fresh perspective too, which we really appreciate. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anything further in open? Corporate officer? Any other business for council? Motion to recess, and we'll go back to closed. Councillor Earl, Councillor Kemp, all in favor, opposed? We'll have 5 minutes.